Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to Three in the Keystone, episode 41, the Dirk Nowitzki episode. I'm
Or
Adam
also,
Seltzer.
also,
Who?
wait, oh, go ahead. Finish
No,
the intro.
I mean, they know who we are at this point.
No, they don't. They don't know who we are.
Adam Seltzer alongside Al Ryan and Chris Guest. Again, episode 41 of Three in the Keystone.
So we were just talking about how obviously it was Dirk, but two other 41s I found. Former Philadelphia Eagle great Thomas Tapay wore number
Mm.
41. And then former big man Will the Thrill Purdue wore number 41.
God,
Big
what a
Turkey,
stiff.
wasn't that his nickname? Or I think that's what somebody called him at a game once. And he got mad.
Like a jive turkey.
Got some rings though at Will Purdue.
Former Sixer also Kibu Stewart. You guys remember Kibu Stewart?
I remember the name. I
Yeah.
couldn't tell you what he did or what position he was.
Or what year or what time frame that was.
He was the Iverson era, back when they were just drafting a bunch of guys and letting them go.
Gotcha.
To get some credibility with this situation, we got to mention Tom Seaver too. Tom Seaver was on 41. He was a Hall of Famer. So we know a little bit about sports, I guess you could say, besides
But
just.
I think we added that it's got to be the Dirk Nowitzki episode.
Well, of course,
Dirk,
yeah.
yeah. Can we just delete all that stuff, Seltzer, when you put this out? Just delete it.
That's quality conversation. But before we get started, guys, I want to talk a little bit about my travels and see any airport horror stories you have. So I'm gonna try and keep it short and sweet. So our company had a worldwide conference, send us down to Boca. So I'm supposed to fly into Fort Lauderdale on last Thursday. And I don't know if you guys saw the news, but Fort Lauderdale airport flooded really, really good, water all over the place. So I get a text Wednesday night overnight that my flight's been canceled and rescheduled. So now I got to fly into Orlando, and then I have a 2-hour layover, and then we're going to Miami, and then we take an hour ride into Boca. So we land in Orlando, and my 2-hour layover becomes a 5-hour layover. And so we call up, our travel company, and we're like, can we get a rental car and just make the drive from Orlando down to Boca? And they're like, sure, go ahead. So we're going to have to go to 4 different rental car places because they're all out of cars. Eventually get a car. But the big issue is there's 10 of us, and 7 of the people check bags, right? So we go to the front desk, and we're like, is there any way you could pull our bags off of this flight so we could just take them with us? And they're like, sure, not a problem. We'll take some time. Probably could take anywhere from a half hour to 2 hours. All right, we had nothing else to do at this point in time. So an hour goes by, and we're waiting for the bags still, and we're like, hey, there's 10 of us here. We have 2 cars. Like, if 5 of us leave, can the other 5 people just grab the bags of the people who are, leaving? They're like, sure, that's no problem. So 5 people leave, and I choose to stay. And we go back in a half hour later. We're like, hey, can you just check on our bags? They scan the bags. They sent the freaking bags to Miami.
Yeah, it's not a surprise.
So the bags are in the air. Now these people, I luckily didn't check a bag. So we had to drive to Fort Lauderdale. People are going to a conference. We got meetings the next day. They don't even have clothes.
Mm-hmm.
Have you the airport experience as a whole is terrible.
It's really
so bad. I learned my lesson years ago. I checked the bag one time on a flight, and they lost it. And luckily I got it, it was just a few hours later than I got there. But I was like, never again. So every time I get on a flight, I don't like to fly anyway, so it's not like it's common. But if I can't bring the bag on or put it under my seat, I ain't going.
I'll do anything to avoid 2 things when flying, and that's check a bag and have a layover.
Yeah, me too.
For sure.
I would rather fly Spirit direct and have to pay for my backpack and my carry-on than fly American Airlines or Delta and have a layover and not have a check. I mean, it's too much hassle. Dude, flying sucks. It's way more complicated than it should be. It's way more inconvenient than it should be. You got to get to the airport so damn early just to wait. It's inconvenient.
And it's getting even worse.
Yeah,
like there's my niece is a flight attendant. She's been for a few years now. She does a couple of different things. That's one of the things she does. She also does like private. She does like private flights. She also works for a specific big time airline. But the stories she has are unbelievable about just how ignorant people are and also how ridiculous the airlines are. Both of which I got no time for. So all the reasons why I keep my behind away from flying unless I absolutely have to, because like you said, Al, it's like a whole day in itself.
Yeah, it's
It
tough.
is. It is. So with that said, listeners, the 3K golf outing will not be in Boca.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Take
I'm
a
lucky.
with
Like
our
I
lady.
travel a ton for work, but I don't have to fly much. But I will be back in the air tomorrow. I have to go to Buffalo tomorrow.
Yeah,
So,
it's rough, man. And also the thing about airports too is there's no rules. So everybody's coming from all over different places. So there's no codes of conduct. There's no state laws. There's no anything because everybody's just from all different places
Just
and
Wild
countries,
West.
and it's just all Wild West.
So, Seltzer, how long is a flight to Buffalo? That's got to be like less than an hour, right?
I think it's a touch over an hour, maybe hour 10, something like that.
You can't even watch a whole Wire episode.
I mean, I'm only going for a day, so I'm not driving. It's like 7 hours to drive. I'm not driving 7 hours. I'm 7 hours back.
Yeah.
you see the country that way, dude.
No, listen, I drive a lot of places, but driving to Buffalo again, 7 hours up, 7 hours back, and back-to-back days. That's a big ask, dude.
I'm trying to convince my wife to go on a cross country trip this summer since we both have time now being teachers.
But how are you going to record a podcast?
Well, that's the last of the like that's the easiest thing to figure out besides the logistics of driving across the country.
There could be a segment on the road with Chris.
Yeah, exactly. You can turn that into gold, bro.
That's true. That's true. Let's jump into it tonight, boys. We got a lot to talk about. We'll start with segment one. Our Sixers are off to a good start, I would say. They've won the first two games of their series with the Brooklyn Nets. They win Saturday afternoon 121-101, and they win last night 96-84, despite a terrible first half of basketball. I have good observations and bad observations. Where do you want to start?
Start with the good. They're 2-0. Start with the good.
You sound thrilled now.
Yeah, because I don't really have great observations.
All right, let's start. I think Joel's style of play, and I guess the better word might be patience, has been very much at the forefront of what's going on. His numbers as far as scoring are not there, but I'm pretty sure the way that they are guarding him, it's almost impossible for him to be at his season averages of 33 points per game. He is currently at 23, 12, and 5, shooting 50% from the floor. Defensively, he's been active throughout. And I thought he's just done a very good job of not trying to force it at this point.
I agree. So something that I really liked from him was in both games, obviously it was very difficult for him to get the ball where he wanted because of what the Nets were doing to him, doubling him and even tripling him. And you saw it especially in game 2. He did something that I haven't really necessarily seen from playoff Joel before, and he decided to take over the game on the glass. And he said, "You know what? I'm not scoring, so I'm gonna just be dominant somewhere else where I can still affect the game." And that shows maturity. That's something that you need your star to do. So I was very happy to see that.
And his defense was awesome too. In both games, I thought his defense was premier. But before I go any further, Al, is that a UConn national championship?
You better believe it.
My man.
I was telling Adam, we got to celebrate, boys, from winning my pool. I won my pool.
Pay it forward, bro.
All I got was this lousy T-shirt, but
that's all right. Pay it forward, though, brother.
Hell yeah.
Right. I know it sounds like a 2023 national. But yeah, so I think that Embiid's performances. I mean, look, it's the playoffs. Everybody's numbers go down a little bit because the defense always picks up a few notches across the league for the most part on average. It's just frustrating. This guy's got to be one of the most like volatile people in the NBA and one of the most volatile in terms of like some games he's going to have that 40 and 15 or whatever. Other games he's going to have 25 and maybe 10. But he still is there and makes a big presence in one way or another, whether it's his scoring, whether it's his defense, like Al said, with the boards. It must be nice that I texted you guys yesterday or before game 1, I forget. But no, it was yesterday. 20, 7 assists, 3 blocks, and people are still saying like, "Oh, Embiid was kind of quiet that game." That's a monster line still, and that's how great he is as a player. He can kind of sleepwalk to a 20 and 20 line in a postseason. That's pretty impressive.
Yeah, and I think anybody who, again, you're talking about these Twitter folks who are out here criticizing because they're just trolling.
Yeah.
I got to imagine either A, they're just 100% being trolls, or B, they just didn't watch the basketball game. Because you look at some of the other guys who are scoring, they're scoring because of Joel. Even if he only has 7 assists, he probably contributes to 14 or 15 baskets by, being the pass before the pass. How many open threes are we going to get? I mean, PJ Tucker took 5. He didn't make any, but he's wide open on all 5. All because when Joel gets the ball, there's 3 bodies coming at him almost before he catches it.
Yeah, I think TNT did a great job last night. I don't know if you watched the local broadcast or the national one, but on TNT they did a great job of showing that like they have at times 3 guys, like you said, on Embiid, and he's able to get to that point where now he can look over defenses and find open shooters. And for the most part, especially the second half, we made them pay for it. So now they've had pretty much 2 different defensive game plans in 2 games, and they're down 0-2.
Oh, I disagree. I think it's been the same. I thought it was the same game plan, other than they just went smaller in the second game.
Well, but that's still an
Seriously.
adjustment though. So that's still a second kind of game plan. But they're down 0-2 still. We took a haymaker from them in the first half last night and still beat them by 12. They know it as well as we do. The series is over. I mean, I'd be shocked if they got a game in this series at this point in time. What do you guys?
Chance.
Yeah, I don't think. I mean, listen, they may steal one if the Sixers just decide to play both halves like they did in the first half last night, but it's not going any more than 5 at most. And I think we all thought that last week too.
And we haven't even gotten a big game from Harden yet. I mean, the 23-13 was a nice game from him, but we know I think he can do better than that. But
yeah, let's
table that to the bad.
Yeah, let's save the Harden chat for the bad stuff.
Okay.
I wanted to just real quick say that I'd mentioned that I wanted to see a lot of the bench guys get some burn in this series, and so far they've all looked good. I mean, I know Christian not a big George Niang guy, but he is what he is, man. He comes off the bench, he hits a couple threes. He's Seth Curry. Like Seth Curry was that guy last year. I don't know. What? He's the 3 guy.
Seth Curry's way better than George Niang.
But the role was the same.
But he's more effective at it.
Who? Niang or Seth? Because Niang's shooting 40% from 3.
I disagree, because Seth could do more off the dribble. Like George is spot up.
He can do more off the dribble, but it was the same role. We weren't necessarily asking Seth to do much off the dribble. Either way. Listen, I want to just put the point out there. Playoff Tobias looks pretty good. He looks like he might be back in a more comfortable role. Tyrese Maxey obviously doing what he did in game 2.
Yeah,
Paul Reed getting substantial and effective minutes. I mean, these 2 games, there is a lot of good. I know I kind of made a face when Adam said, "Do you want to start with the good or the bad?" But I do think there was a lot of good to take away from these first 2 games.
And they've continued to keep the theme that they have all year long of responding to adversity. Again, that first half last night, it looked like there was times where we might say to ourselves, "This is the game that Brooklyn's going to steal," and we responded big time in that second half. Again, they gave us all they had, and that game felt like we were down 20 at the half, and we were down 5.
Yeah.
I mean, it felt so lopsided, and just like the Sixers were sleepwalking in that first half, and they still were only down 2 possessions.
Yeah.
So but I'll wait till they get to the bad part, because I'll see if you added to something or if I'll bring it up either way.
Cam Johnson had 18. I thought he had like 30.
That was the game of his life. And that's another thing. They had Mikal Bridges went off.
Mikal Bridges had a good half. He didn't.
Yeah. But I'm saying he went off for the first half in game 1, and then we controlled in game 2. Cam Johnson went off in the first half. Game 2, we controlled him in the second half.
Yeah.
So every game they're having a guy that has to have a career type half to get them in the game by the half. So who's going to be in game 3?
But that's the difference between the Nets and these other teams that are in the playoffs. Is the Nets have these guys who can give you 24 minutes of good basketball, but you can shut them down. All these other teams have proven scorers that are more consistent and can continue that production for an entire game. Again, like a Cam Johnson is a nice player, but if you put some attention towards him, like they did to Mikal Bridges in the second half of game 1, they don't have that natural number 1 scoring instinct gene that a Jason Tatum has, that a Donovan Mitchell has, that even like a Chris Middleton has when he gets going, or someone of that nature. So that's why this series was a good matchup for the Sixers. Is the Nets just don't have that offensive firepower to go for 48 minutes unless they get multiple guys going at the same time.
And I think Bridges is coming. I think he's going to be a star. I
I-
think, but at the same time, it doesn't mean he's going to be a premier. I mean, a superstar. He's going to be a star.
I think he's
definitely
best
gonna be a
fit in the role
star.
he had in Phoenix. Like I don't think he's a number 1 or number 2 offensive option on a championship team.
Yeah, he's a really good role player, really good piece.
But that's on a championship level team. You're saying, right?
Yeah, for
Yeah.
sure.
Well, he might not. I mean, he might never find himself in that kind of team again. So
That's fine.
Brooklyn they look like a team right now though that is like their superstar player is out, like he's injured or whatever. And
He's
you
in
look
Phoenix.
around, you're like, they don't have a guy. They don't have that guy. He's not there. Like they look like they're a team that's just a guy or two short. But what we see is what we get. That's all they have.
And that's
Yeah.
why they scored 35 points in the second half last night.
Right.
They're searching for an easy guy or a guy you can throw to and get a shot, and they don't have it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and they have
And give some credit to the Sixers defense. They've done a very nice job.
they have no one with any experience. And the first half was just this. I mean, and whatever. I know we've heard the Doc press conference now, but they were asleep at the wheel in the first half.
For sure.
Yeah.
I want to talk a little bit, Al, you mentioned Maxey and Tobias. And again, we can credit some of their success to the fact that they're getting such open looks. But they moved Tobias. Tobias is playing a little bit in the dunker spot, which I thought was a nice adjustment. He's actually, been able to make a couple dunks. He also had a really nice kick out pass from down low. I think it was in the third quarter last night for to Maxey in the corner, who hit a 3. He looks like he's got a little life. He's actually rebounding hard, like he's hitting the glass with some energy. I mean, some of the balls are still bouncing off his hands, but at least he's in there fighting. And Tyrese Maxey is he's just a pleasure to watch.
It's a delight.
He brings such juice. His shooting is crazy. I think he had 6 for 13 from 3 last night.
And we talked about this before. Every shot he shoots, it looks like it's going in. It never looks like, whoa, what was that? Like he always is right in the cylinder.
And it's him like Steph and Clay, where it's like they can pull from 27 feet, and I'm confident.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And my only knock on Maxey is in game 1, and he did this last year in the playoffs a little bit. Sometimes he can be a little passive, especially early in games. The guy doesn't realize yet how good he actually is.
I think I noticed that too, Seltzer. I think, and I could be wrong, but it feels like to me he feels like obviously with James on this team, with Joel on the team, even Tobias to an extent, him and his age and experience level, I think he tries to get them going first, and then when if it's showing that they're not ready to get it going yet, or they're getting stopped defensively, whatever the case would be, I feel like he picks it up at that point. Like last night, Harden was having a rough first quarter, and Maxey was like, "All right, I got you," and put us on his back until he got subbed out for the first time. But it feels to me like that's kind of the flow of what he does. Is kind of like let's Joel and James eat first, see if they're going or not, see if he has to play more of a passer facilitator with them versus being he's never going to be a number 1 option, but being a number 2 option offensively, scoring himself.
But I feel like it should be the other way around. Don't you think Harden should try and get Maxey off?
Yeah, but pride's not going to let him. I mean, I think Harden still thinks he's better than he probably is at this point in the game. But you're right. I mean, I agree with you, but I don't know if he thinks that way.
I think he still thinks it's his role to be that guy because he has the experience and he's been there before. He's more of a trusted hand than Tyrese is.
And plus, being the point guard of the team, the quarterback of the offense, Harden is. I mean, he and plus with his career, he's earned those stripes to be able to be the first one to get the chance to be the second fiddle in the offense, so to speak, behind Joel. But as soon as he's showing that it's not his night, Tyrese got to do what he's got to do. But let me ask you real quick. I got a question. With the Nets defensive strategy, Cam Johnson mentioned it a lot last night in his post-game press conference. Maxey torched them with they just swinging the ball around to him wide open. He made him pay all the time. Do you think that was a little bit disrespectful on Brooklyn's part, not respecting the shooters that we have on our team, despite the fact that the Sixers are the number 1 3-point shooting team in the league? Or do you think it's simply just desperation? Like we have nothing for Joel. This is the only card we have to play.
I think it's the latter, Chris. I think it's that. I think it's they came into the series and they said, all right, let's shut down Joel. Let's throw everything we have at him. And let's hope that the shooters can't shoot. Let's hope they go cold. Let's hope they miss some shots and we can stay in the game. If we can hold Joel to under 30, we might have a shot. And I think they found out really quickly that that's not the case.
Yeah.
I think it's a
It's
combination.
got to be a scary feeling for them. Like, what do we got to do? Like, that's like being in a fight and punching a guy in the face straight on, and they're just like, "Is that it?"
But you know what? It's what it is, though, man. There's teams that make the playoffs because half the league makes the playoffs. There's teams that make it that just aren't ready yet, and they're just not ready.
Yeah, and let's be real. Like Brooklyn's record was inflated because they played half the year with Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving.
Yeah.
They're probably not the 6th seed if they have this roster the entire season.
Yeah, to say they're not a true 6 seed, and
it was the best matchup the Sixers could have got. We said that last week, and they're proving it. But Chris, to answer your question, I think it's a combination of both. I think we talked last week about the big man depth, and I think Jock Vaughn is saying, okay, Nick Claxton, good defensive player, probably a little undersized for Joel. If he gets in foul trouble and we're just going to single cover him with Day'Ron Sharpe, we're going to get torched anyway. And I don't know if Nick Claxton can stay out of foul trouble if he's single covering Joel. So what other choice do we have? Let's see if these guys can go cold because we've seen, listen, Sixers best 3-point shooting team in the league, but we watch every single game. There's nights when they can't throw it in the hoop. It's just the way it is.
And I think that Jacques Vaughn, to his credit, tried to throw a wrinkle in it in the fourth quarter where he tried to only double Joel in post versus the top of the key.
Right.
But by that point, Joel can see everything. I mean, it's too late.
And here's the other thing, and we can talk about this as I want to talk about it a little bit in the bad, but we can bring it up now, is while I think Joel is building confidence in how he handles double teams, the fact that Brooklyn is going small right now, Joel can see over everything. There's no 6'10" guy with his arms in the air. It's Royce O'Neal right now. There's no real arms in passing lanes. It's not Al Horford and Jason Tatum trapping him. It's Royce O'Neal and Spencer Dinwiddie when he can put the ball up in the air, nobody can grab it and make whatever passes he wants. So hopefully that builds his confidence, and that's a good thing. But I think if other teams choose to double, it's going to be a lot more difficult for him to make those passes against a lot, longer and bigger teams. So,
yeah, I agree with that, and I think that they got to devise some ways in these last couple games that either get him the ball deeper in the paint or get him the ball quicker if he's up top. They throw that lazy lob pass up to him, and by the time he gets there, the double's there. Make a quicker pass. Get it in him so he can look around, see what's developing, or possibly even make a move, turn around, get his back to the basket.
I couldn't agree more, Al. I think, and again, Seltzer, you said about getting to the bads, but I'll mention this while it's on my mind. If we had a point guard who pushed the offense quick, I think going into a half court set with this offense, even for Maxey, when Maxey tries to go side to side and try to dribble around somebody, I think that's when he gets in trouble, especially against good defensive teams like Boston. We mentioned that previously. He doesn't have to do that in this series because he has the speed advantage and he can shoot. And he's been able to go after and do both in this series. But I think speed with this team would kill, and they could win the title if they had just a faster paced offense to get Joel the ball faster, to be able to go around screens faster, pin screens, make jump shots, or drive by, get calls. They just, last night there was one play in that second quarter, and I'm sitting there and I was just screaming. Harden literally held the ball 8 seconds. Didn't even dribble it. Just held the ball, face guarded, looked around 8 seconds, didn't move. That can't happen. And that's why he's had games for us. We mentioned it last week. I think it was that, about if we want to keep him or not, regardless. That stuff is so frustrating, man. And that's why we've been saying for years, we don't know if Harden can win a title with that kind of offense. And we find ourselves now asking the same questions.
Well, I think we saw the two different styles of play last night. The second half, the ball popped and they were moving the basketball and we were making shots. First half, James Harden was dribbling the blood out of the basketball. And when he does that, they don't get any flow. And unless Joel Embiid's bailing him out, which obviously he wasn't last night because of the double teams, We have what did we score? 40 in the first half, low 40s?
something like that, 42 or something like that. And the longer he does that, the more that, like, as that shot clock goes down, those defenders creep right into Joel's face. The more that goes down. So even when he has to make a decision and wants to force it Joel, they're already there, set up, ready to go for that double team or that triple team. That's why that stuff can't happen.
Yeah.
Some
Listen,
James Harden.
This team is built a lot like the Golden State teams that have won because we have shooters everywhere. Adam, you mentioned it. You asked us the question, I think maybe a month ago, about how many players in the Sixers are averaging whatever percent from three. It was like 38%.
Yep.
Right? We have shooters. We finally have shooters all over the floor. We have to be able to trust them. We have to be able to say, okay, if we're going to double, if these teams are going to double Joel, let's put Joel in the post. We can get him the entry pass, and then he can look around and kick it out. We have to be able to trust Tyrese Maxey and DeAnthony Melton and James Harden and all these players because at the end of the day, that's what's winning championships.
I don't think Joel is comfortable still handling double teams in the post.
He's not. He's not.
He likes to be able to be facing up. He generally, as a basketball player, prefers to be facing up at the foul line extended. I mean, he said many times when he's posting up and has his back to the basket, he can't see where the doubles are coming from times.
Right. You're blind. Pat the court. Right. I mean, that's the hardest spot to be double teamed.
He's clearly proven to be a more effective player in that high post, but it is, to your point, it is easier to double team because there's many different options you can come from when he's at that foul line extended. So I don't know if you can continue to win playoff series with Joel Embiid averaging under 27 or 28 points per game.
And turning the ball over 8 times. You can't.
Listen,
not against Boston, not against Milwaukee.
Again, this is going to sound, I'll rip Joel all day. 8 turnovers is too many. He had 2 turnovers in the last 30 seconds of the game when Cam Johnson was just being a snake and steal.
It was
6 is still too many, but those were bullshit plays.
Right.
I know.
The pad, like the reverse stat pad that he got last night from Cam Johnson stealing the ball.
He took 2 turnovers. Yeah, you said it. Yeah. But I am worried, and I'm worried about James Harden and dealing with defenders with a little bit of length. Because even though Spencer Dinwiddie and Bridges are not the tallest players, they have length, just like all the guys on Boston have length. And if James Harden isn't, I mean, look, 1 for 7, 5 turnovers in the first half. I don't want to beat a dead horse, but he doesn't look comfortable driving the lane.
Well, I don't know if he's not comfortable or it's just so predictable.
Does anybody want to know what he's shooting from 2-point land in the series?
I don't know the exact numbers, but I mean, you could definitely see I think he feels more comfortable shooting the 3 on that step back than he does driving to the hole at this point.
Any guesses?
Yeah, he's like 2 for something, right? Like 2 for 20 or something.
15% from 2 in the series.
Yeah,
I don't have the exact shot totals.
It's just the 3-pointers are masking it right now.
He is shooting 42% from 3. He's averaging 15, 5, and 10. It's got to be better. I just worry. It's crazy that we have 2 superstars who I feel almost the same way. Joel is obviously so good, but when things go bad, I feel the same way about James. James kind of like, I don't want to say puts his head down, but he gets like mopey and not energetic, and mentally, it seems like he mentally checks out when things aren't going right for him.
I think the opposite. I don't think he's mopey. I think he forces the issue too much. I think he forces those drives and begs for fouls, and they just don't come anymore.
0 free throw attempts in the first 2 games for James Harden.
Yeah.
And that's a little bit of, I mean, I understand what we're saying as far as like the frustration, but some of that, he's not getting, it's not clean every single time.
No, you're right. Do you know how many games this year he had 0 free throw attempts?
2.
None. He shot free throws in every game this year until the
for as much as the non-Philadelphia fans want to call Joel Embiid a free throw merchant, James Harden does not get the call anymore. He does not get those calls when he barrels into the paint like the OG and he tucks the ball under both arms.
The fullback.
He does not get that call.
It's the fullback. He just plays bulldozer.
Yeah.
And there's a reason why, a lot of guys don't play that way right now in the league.
Ineffective.
It's, as I say, it's ineffective. You're turning a high percentage shot into a low percentage shot, really. And if you get a crew that's not calling that foul, you're not going to be productive offensively in that game. You're just not. And
there was a play in game 1. I'm sure you guys remember. He blew by his defender, and then Day'Ron Sharpe comes out of nowhere. That's that play again 3-4 years ago. James Harden is
think
getting
that.
to the rim and finishing that shot. And then Dave Roger comes out of nowhere and blocks him. He just doesn't have that step.
No.
And he's made the adjustments to his game like we saw it this year to try and, combat that. It's just, it's the playoffs.
It's
Playoffs.
if you have a good coach and you have players who actually are paying attention in the film room, the book is out there on him and he's a step slower. So you know what he's going to throw at you and you can get there now.
And well, to be fair to him, though, he is a step slower because of his Achilles situation.
That's fine. But
He's still not his 100%.
It is what it is.
Yeah. Yeah, it's very frustrating. It's almost like, and he's had games where he's been awesome. Let's not act like he's just every game.
And he was not bad in game one.
No, he was electric from beyond the arc.
He was,
but
just,
again, that's
especially the second quarter. He was just terrible last night. Terrible.
Yeah, and it's turning into like the James Harden games, where it's like that's kind of what I call it now. When it's like you can tell by the second quarter, you can tell if you're in a James Harden game or not, and that means he's not going to do anything. Like you're going to have to hope that someone can go a little bit above their normal averages to make up for his below averages that he's going to have in that game.
It feels like last year's playoffs.
Yeah. Last time we had Maxey step up, thankfully, to make up for it. But we have to have somebody at that point in time to be able to step up.
Absolutely.
Listen, everybody's stepping up. Tobias is stepping up. Paul Reed is stepping up. Now, listen, I don't want to sit here and have to rely on Paul Reed against Boston.
Can we talk Paul? Can we talk a little about Paul?
Hell yeah, we can talk Paul.
That's my boy. I've been telling you all year.
Well, to be fair,
that's the ugliest game in the league, dude.
No, man.
It's such the dude that came off of work and is just wild on the court, but somehow finds ways to get the ball in the net.
And playing in Tim's.
Yeah, the Tim dude. Yeah, no doubt. He got his hat on and Tim's on.
He got Tim's and jeans on, dude.
He is.
He shows up.
I said to you guys last night. We talked about it in the preseason. You need to play these guys in the regular season. And Paul Reed got run the last 2 months of the year. And all that talk about how much he fouls, he doesn't foul much anymore. He's matured out of that. Yeah, he's active. He rebounds. He's got good touch around the rim. He's developed a chemistry with Harden where Harden actually finally trusts him and will pass him the ball now because he used to not do that at all.
Right.
And there's no question he's the best backup center that we've had in the playoffs since Embiid's been a part of the team.
And he's costing us pennies.
For now.
Well, I mean, I don't think he's gonna. How much do you think his ceiling is for his?
I don't know. He's restricted. It's a matter of. I don't think it's how much he's going to cost us. It's a matter of if he wants to get the hell away from Doc Rivers.
Well, he may not have to worry about that.
But listen, here's if he continues to play like this. In past years, I'm just going to run down a few of the backup centers that we've had in Joel's era: Amir Johnson, Greg Monroe, Boban. Al Horford when he was terrible. Kyle O'Quinn. DeAndre Jordan. Paul Millsap.
Dwight Howard.
Dwight Howard, right. Those were playoff runs where you would put those guys in and you'd be like, I need to survive for 4 minutes.
Literally and figuratively.
Right.
Did you say DeAndre Jordan?
I said DeAndre Jordan.
Okay.
So I would need 4 minutes on each half. And Joel would have to play 40 minutes a night. And we would have to just hope those 8 minutes we could survive. Now Paul can seem to give us not only those 8 minutes, he can give you like 12.
Yeah.
And that keeps Joel fresher for the fourth quarter. And let's be real, and but we can talk about this more in the second segment. It's 4 more minutes that Joel can't get hurt.
And listen, here's the difference between Paul Reed and those guys. Paul Reed is younger, he's hungrier, he's embracing the disruptor role. He wants to be a disruptor. He doesn't want to go out there and try to prove himself that he still has something in the tank. He just wants to go out there and knock some heads, grab some boards, throw down a little nifty little reverse dunk.
Yeah, he loves that reverse dunk.
Dribble between the legs.
Him and Korkmaz when he gets in love that little reverse dunk.
Yeah.
But the other thing that he can do is when teams go pick and roll, he can switch and he can guard a Seth Curry. He can he can contest those shots. He's athletic enough and he's long enough, like you're saying. So he can do those things that you need your backup center to do. He's been tremendous.
You can also go old school even and talk about Nerlens as one of the backups that Joel had, right?
But not in the playoff era.
Well, no, not in the playoffs. Yeah, that's true. But I have a love-hate with Paul Reed because Seltzer, I was first on the Paul Reed. I opened the door for you to be on the bus of Paul Reed. All right. Because at draft night, I was like, yeah, that DePaul kid is all right. No, we'll see. Yeah, but but I loved him in the beginning. And then when he would come in, sometimes he'd be frustrated because he was raw. And I'm like, oh, maybe this kid can't play in the league. And then he'll have a game like he's had for the last few weeks now at this point, where it's like, this guy is energy. This guy is like all his minutes are productive. Like you're not afraid anymore for Joel to sit 6, 7, 8 minutes in these big time games and in these playoffs. Now we see too. You mentioned, I think Al, was it you that said about being nervous about Paul Reed against like the Bostons of the world, right?
Right. I
don't think Boston has anybody that. I mean, we know they don't have anybody that can really like. Joel's eaten Boston this year for the most part. But even Boston's second unit, like nobody's really, there's no bigs on their team, period, that I think are going to throw off Joel or Paul. What do you think? I mean, I don't see it like someone coming in like Paul's going to be a non-factor because this guy's in. I don't see that. I think he can still be productive against him.
It's not like you have to. Teams are planning against Paul Reed where they're going to be, oh my gosh,
right.
Energy is energy, and he's going to hit the You can rebound against anybody. I don't fear that Paul. I think Paul can play against any team.
Really, I mean, unless you put like Robert Williams out there against Paul Reed, and that he'll have he's also young, he's also energetic, also athletic, long, that can combat him at the rim. But if they're going to go into that series, if they want to call themselves, starting Rob instead of having him off the bench for that purpose, like that bench unit at that point becomes weak up top. I mean, not up top. I'm sorry, under the basket. So I think Paul could still eat in that series.
Yeah, and I just want to see Paul Reed make life miserable for Al Horford and potentially Jason Tatum or Jaylen Brown when they drive to the paint. That's what I want to see Paul Reed do.
And they'll never do it, but I would love to see McDaniels or Paul. Well, McDaniels might see, but Paul with Embiid on the court and having
I've been asking for that all year.
Yeah, and having Paul just face up Jason Tatum and seeing what happens.
Just put Paul in a freaking dunker spot.
Yeah, I would love to see if how he would perform it defensively against Tatum.
We can't talk about Paul Reed and not talk about the tweet. Did you guys see that tweet that got unearthed by him from like 2012?
No, but I have another tweet I want to talk about Paul. But go ahead.
The whole tweet, it's by Paul Reed, and it's like this is the tweet. It says 911. What's your emergency? 2 girls are fighting over me, and what's the problem? The ugly one winning. So it's like the best part of that is he was 13 years old when he tweeted that.
He probably still played the same way at 13. He's
sure
probably the kid that showed up on the court, was always picking his jeans up after he made a layup on somebody running down the court.
Yep.
Can we talk? Oh shit! Sorry, watching the Phillies. Garrett Stubbs just got drilled. Can we talk a little bit about Doc Rivers' comments about Paul Reed the other day? Did you guys see them?
What did he say? No, I didn't. I tried to listen to him talk, to be honest with you.
Doc Rivers is like a chronic liar.
Yeah, he's absolutely pathological.
He said that in the beginning of this year, when they would go to the all bench units with James Harden, that James said that he would only play with Montrez.
Oh, I did hear that.
Because Montrez was offensively ready and Doc had to convince James that Paul Reed was the better fit because of the defense that was needed on that unit. Let's get this right. Doc Rivers hates Paul Reed. There's no world where Doc Rivers is going to sit here and vouch for Paul Reed when anytime he makes a mistake, he takes him out of the game. He wouldn't play him last year before James Harden even got here.
The founder of the Paul Reed Victory Tour.
No, there's no victory tour for Paul Reed. Doc Rivers does not like Paul Reed, and it's insane for him to now go and try and blame James Harden for the fact that he didn't play Paul Reed.
But that's the story of Glenn Rivers. He's done it from day one. Remember when we had the situation when we lost Game 7, and they asked him about it afterwards, and he was like, going into Game 7, and they asked about his history of blowing leads, 3-1 leads in Game 7s, and he literally threw his teams previously under the bus. I tell you all the time, he never says, I can do a better job of this. No. I should have put this guy here. Everything is always somebody else's fault, the team's fault. They weren't ever good enough. I convinced someone to do this. It's never any self-evaluation that he gives to the media or to his players. And that's why I don't like the guy, and I hope that I love more than nothing, or I would love nothing more than to see him on Broad Street raise the Larry O'Brien, but not because I want to see him raise it. I want the team to have it. But that dude, he's just so unlikable.
He's an egomaniac.
Did you see the tweets today were funny because they had the he was mic'd up last night. Were you at the game or did you watch it?
No, I sold those.
Okay, so on the TNT broadcast, they had him mic'd up, and he calls that timeout right at the first possession of the second half, and then they go on that run. But they have him mic'd up, and he's all you hear is he's like, "Come on, guys, you gotta want it, guys."
Yeah.
And then on Twitter today, it's like Doc Rivers' legendary motivational speech to get his team back in the game.
Yeah, come on. Yeah, it's just like whatever.
To his credit, I think he's done a pretty good job so far. He's made some adjustments in game, which we haven't seen. You know, they went zone last night. I thought that helped, even though I think their zone defense sucks.
Well, I know you don't. You have a relationship with McDaniels, hot and cold. I think, like I do with Paul. I think some games I feel like you think that he can't play in the winning team, and other games you're like he's doing a good job, which is fine. That's fine. That's no like I get it, but I love when they're on the floor together. When McDaniels and Paul are on the floor, like that just makes us so much more athletic and long and defensive minded. And I'll take that any day of the week over number 22 that we traded earlier this year. I'm fine with that trade. I'm totally fine with McDaniels being here. I think he didn't have a good game last game. I will say that. He struggled. He had foul trouble. He didn't score. We got 0 points from the 3/4 position off the bench last night.
Yep.
But thankfully, we're playing a team that we don't need that.
Yeah, no, I like McDaniels, and I hope they keep him in the offseason. I just think that he's going to be, and that's what we've seen, he's going to be very inconsistent because he's young and he's never been in these moments. And I think, let's be real, any bench player in the NBA is probably going to be inconsistent. That's why they're bench players. Mm-hmm. He played terrible, I thought, last night. And I was actually shocked that Doc went with him down the stretch. Although I heard his explanation for it in the post game, and I actually was something I hadn't thought of and made sense. He was saying that when Embiid was getting doubled at the top, if he had McDaniels dive towards the basket, he's a lot more athletic than PJ Tucker, and it gives Embiid a bigger body to throw the ball to, which made sense even though they threw him an alley-oop in the second quarter and he couldn't finish it for whatever reason.
Yeah, that was a little – look, he was in between the dunk and a layup, and he messed it up.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I just wish that they had a better forward off the bench as their first forward other than Niang or McDaniels. I think that's a very black hole in this team, and I worry about that moving forward.
Yeah, and I was shocked that Niang played as much as he did the second half. Once we got everything going and we took the lead. The only time the only window I see to play Niang in a playoff game is if we are trailing big time. Like if we're trailing by like 9 or more and you need a spark, you need a 3 or a couple threes, put him in there, see if he can get hot. Other than that, like I said to you guys, I do not see a world where he belongs on an NBA playoff court. He's showing you that. He's showing you that. He had a rebound and no points in what? How many minutes was he last night?
He didn't take a shot last night.
He couldn't take a shot.
Yeah. But he had a couple threes in the first game. Listen, he is what he is. He looks slow, and he shouldn't be the first forward off the bench either. You're exactly right. His role should be in certain games, he comes off, takes a couple shots. If he's hot, he stays in. If he's not, he comes out.
Yeah, I was just going to say, Chris, I like him in that role where, like, if we're up 8 or 9 and you throw him in there against the second team and potentially he hits a couple and now you're up, double digits.
So you like to have him for a dagger?
I like when I'm at the blackjack table and I get an 11 and I double down. That's what I like. That's what I'm saying here.
Well, what do you double down from 0? Because that's what he gave you last night.
But that's fine. And again, the difference again between the Nets and some other teams you're going to be facing is you could throw him on Finney Smith and not have to worry about it.
Yeah.
You could throw him on a couple of these other guys and not have to worry about him getting smoked off the dribble. So I think that's where it doesn't hurt you to have him out there playing a couple more minutes. It's when you get into these better teams where there's not that guy that you could throw him on that's not an offensive threat where you're going to see him get exposed time after time.
Yeah, no, I agree. I'm just happy that we drew these guys, caught them at the right time, because if we played Miami, and I was getting a little nervous for the last week or two of the season to see if they ended up catching that 6th spot. But I knew going in, Atlanta was sitting ducks, Brooklyn was sitting ducks, and they're both showing that. so far. I think Atlanta's down 20 right now. So that series was already over too.
Yeah, that series was over before it started. All right. Anything else before we touch on our other Philadelphia topic for the night? I think we
I'm
got
good.
game 3 on Thursday, and then
Thursday night, yep.
and then
And then
game 4
close it out.
Saturday.
Yeah, Saturday afternoon, 1:00.
It should be a sweep.
Hopefully next week we're talking about a Boston Celtics preview going into round 2, as it will be Sixers in Boston in
Wait,
some shape or form, unless something extremely stupid happens.
hopefully we're talking about the Sixers advancing and the Celtics suddenly in a dogfight with Atlanta, tied 2-2.
Yeah, boy can dream.
Yeah.
Maybe we have a 3 in the Keystone live from Brooklyn Saturday afternoon.
You going up there?
Where Brooklyn at?
Yeah, where are they at? No, I was just throwing it out there. Just throwing it out there for food for thought. Maybe a little boys' day or something, you know.
And there was some other Philadelphia news yesterday, Chris.
The Celtics just totally passes over it.
Moving on.
Jalen Hurts,
Got the bag.
5 years, 255 million, 179 guaranteed, 51 million average value, highest in NFL history for now.
Yeah.
Chris, you're the Eagles guy. Give us your thoughts on the deal.
February 16th is the day I tweeted. My prediction, 6 years, 300 million, 240 million guaranteed. I missed it by a couple dollars and a year. If they had went to that 6 year, I would have been close to having that right on the money. Pardon the pun there. But it's a good deal. It's a good deal. I saw something earlier how the way that it's been structured, we all know he's a cap genius. That's one strength he does have, is managing the cap. It's structured in such a way where it's not really going to handicap the Eagles with their moves that they can make until like 2026, 2027, something like that. So the next 3-4 years, we have a lot of flexibility still to make to do some moving and shaking, so to speak. I think it's a good deal. Obviously, when Burrow gets his money, he'll probably pass it.
Yep.
And I'm okay with that. I get that. I get it. Burrow's a stud. He's one of my favorite players in the league. I'm fine with that. He's also been to a Super Bowl, just like Jalen has. Herbert's an interesting case because I'm wondering if Herbert is going to get the same, or his agent's going to try to get a couple dollars more. If he does, I don't think that's warranted. I think he should be under Jalen and Burrow. But we'll see.
I think Herbert's deal will fall more in line with whatever Lamar gets, because I think Lamar's
That's a whole other can of worms.
I know.
Yeah.
So we'll have to see. Can I give a shout out to whoever wrote the rules for the NFL salary cap? Shout out to that guy, because I don't understand how it's possible that you could sign a guy for $50 million a year, only salary cap $6 million against the cap this year, 13 next year, 21, 31. The rules of the NFL salary cap are to be able to understand them. Shout out to Howie Roseman, because
I was going to say Roseman read the book front and back. He figured it out.
It doesn't make any sense at all.
So 3 things real quick. If you're a fan and you're worried about giving Jalen Hurts all this money because of all that, once you pay the quarterback, it's so hard to maintain a team. Like,
you're going to take my
stop being scared, dude. You don't have a team if you don't have a quarterback. So that's number 1. Number 2, to get this deal done before the Burrow and Herbert deals that are upcoming, genius. You had to do that, because you're potentially going to look back and say, wow, we got this kid at a discount. And then number 3, Chris mentioned Howie being a cap genius. Dude, he's already working his magic, restructuring Milata's contract.
Mm-hmm.
And now saving up some money down the line with his deal.
They also restructured Lane already, gave him that $26 million signing bonus or whatever it was they turned it into for when they did that a few weeks ago. He was it NFL.com or I forget. I gotta look up the publication, but the other day I saw they named him the number 1 rated GM in the NFL, and this is the reasons why. Yeah. Also, Al, to your point, that whole mindset is skewed because the biggest argument that mindset had in its favor was the Chiefs, and they just won the Super Bowl.
Yeah,
Right.
but the Chiefs have the guy, maybe one of
But
the greatest of all time.
but I'm saying they're also paying him as such accordingly, and they still were able to win the Super Bowl, having to field 52 other players.
I think the thing is that what we're saying though is if you're going to pay the guy, he's got to be the guy. He can't be Kirk Cousins.
I don't know, man. I mean, you're right, but I think a lot of people are just saying literally from a concrete perspective of cash, it straps you down to be able to field a good team
It
because
does
guys are
for sure, but
expensive
if you
to
have
work
the
with.
guy, you can overcome that. The guy, Peyton Manning, Tom Brady,
I
Patrick
agree.
Mahomes.
I agree with you with that. I'm just saying, I think a lot of people out there they're not thinking that same way. They're thinking from a literal perspective. If you're paying a guy 50 million, and here's another reason why that deal's so great. It's 5 for both sides. You have the flexibility of how he's created for the team, but also for Hurts' perspective, he is able to now still cash in when I don't know if you guys saw Joe Banner about 2 months ago said that he believes within 5 years NFL quarterbacks will be worth $75 to $80 million a year.
Mm-hmm.
He's going to be able to still cash in on that situation if it plays out as such in the next 4 or 5 years. Obviously, if he continues to ball out, that 5-year deal he just signed, they're going to renegotiate that one. So he's still able to have flexibility on his own to be able to make even more money down the road.
No, all very, very valid points. And again, I think like you said, the way contracts are going to inflate as years go on. That's why we've talked to Bryce Harper and how 5-6 years from now that contract's going to be a bargain if it's not already at this point. Because again, as the values of other contracts inflate, it's going to be a steal.
What do you do for both of you? What do you do when you're in his perspective and you get the call from your agent that the deal's done? You're getting $255 million over the next 5 years. 55, what is it? 50.1 or whatever it is million dollars.
Yeah.
Per year. What are you doing with yourself? The first day or first hours that within that time frame where you get that call.
Like if I'm living my life right now or if I'm living it like he is.
Well, whatever. Like you are right now.
I'm buying a vacation home.
Yeah.
Buying a vacation home.
I'll be honest. I don't where we're at.
I don't know. I need time to think about it.
Boca.
Maybe,
Listen,
maybe the Carolinas.
This is what I'm doing. I'm heading on over to @3K Podcast on Twitter, and I'm placing an order for a hoodie.
Yeah, that's a great plug.
That's what I'm doing.
Well, the second thing you're going to be doing is making sure you fly somewhere where you could be first class and private, where you don't have to check your bag.
Well, I own a private jet at that point. I mean, I'm not flying with the common folk anymore.
Right, I'm beyond the common folk. I gotta be honest. I'm probably just. I don't even know, man. I'm so happy for that kid. He's going through a lot the last couple of years with the Wentz fiasco that they had, and him with at Alabama getting benched when he did for Tua, and guys just thinking people just thinking he wasn't really going to be a substantial NFL quarterback, and now he's literally. I mean, you could argue he is the best quarterback in his conference, and at worst, the third best quarterback in football. And he's earned every dime of that.
He did. He went out and earned it this year. There's no doubt about it.
And his leadership is also like, I mean, he may be the best leader in football. We kind of talked about this a few weeks ago. Like, there's guys that are lining up to want to play for Jalen Hurts and with Jalen Hurts. We haven't had that kind of leadership on the Eagles in a long time. And that says a lot, man. I mean, these guys are willing to die for this dude, and I love that about him. That he has that charisma and that makes him, like you said, Seltzer, the guy. And I think we definitely have the guy at this point in time.
A little teaser. I'm assuming we'll do some draft talk next week with the draft just about 2 weeks away. But you got to load up on him now. I would go all in around him on the offense, and I know we have weapons already. But we just proved that you can't beat a Kansas City in the Super Bowl with defense. You got to be able to put points on the board.
I think I smell what you're cooking now.
Oh,
I smell what you're cooking. Little southern cooking you might be drawing up for that 10.
Hook 'em horns, baby.
Yeah.
Little Bijan.
I just saw. I was reading earlier the scout page, and it said how Bijan is at his best, his highest potential that he can reach based on what, like, realistically, is going to be a mix of Saquon Barkley, Christian McCaffrey, and Bo Jackson.
Oh my God, who was that? His
A
parents?
hybrid. Not all of them put like, but a hybrid of those three. He can line up in the slot as a receiver like Christian can. He can bulldoze you like Bo can or like Saquon, and he's got a high IQ. He's got a high IQ. The more I read about him, it's hard to pass that up. That
I'm
potential.
all in on him. I'm all in on him.
As somebody who tanked in our Dynasty Fantasy League to get him, Philadelphia would be a great spot to land.
Yeah, that's a guy to get. We'll see.
All right. Listen, I don't want to transfer back to Sixers before we wrap up segment one, but I wanted to throw it over under as I watch the Phillies. What happens first? The Sixers close out the Nets, or we get a Trey Turner or Nick Castellanos home run?
Sixers.
I'll take option 2, option B there.
All right. I was thinking the Phillies, even though they're getting no hit through 7 innings in tonight's
no hitter right now.
They're getting no hit.
You should have asked me about Josh Harrison a few hours ago instead.
Josh is on the board with 1. But listen, the Sixers aren't the only ones playing in the NBA playoffs. We've had some really exciting basketball and some controversial, fights, suspensions, potential suspensions. So we're going to dive into the weekend that was in the NBA playoffs right in segment 2. Be right back. Welcome back to segment 2. We're going to talk NBA playoffs, the weekend that was. And boys, we'd be mistaken if we didn't start with the series that's captivated America already. The Golden State Warriors, the defending champions, are down 0-2 to the Sacramento Kings. We talked about it last week. I think we all took the Warriors except for Liam.
Yeah, shout out Liam.
You took the Kings, who have jumped out to this 2-0 lead.
Hey, it's sweet.
And
time still.
There is plenty of time. You are right about that. But you can start to see the walls cracking in Golden State. We had the Draymond Green stomp last night. Let's start with that. Do you think he should be suspended? What were your thoughts on the play overall? And what does it show from Golden State?
He should not be suspended. It was reactionary to Sabonis grabbing his leg. But both looked, I felt like I was watching a WWE match. Dude, it's not a real stomp. It's a pro wrestling stomp. First of all, it looks like he's losing his balance. But since it's Draymond, everybody, it must be malicious. He must have stomped him. But let me tell you what, Draymond's listed at 6'6", 230. And if he actually stomped a man who was laying down in the ribs, his ribs would explode. They would just shatter in his body. Draymond's doing what he does. He's getting under everyone's skin. While they were reviewing the play in the timeout, he's sitting there and going back and forth with that one big fan in the stands. The fans flipping him the double birds, and Draymond's calling him a P word. So he's doing what he does. I don't think you suspend Draymond at all for this.
Oh, I'm 100% on the other side of this. You're right, Al, because of it being Draymond is the reason why he should be suspended. I'm tired of this guy. I'm tired of this act. I'm tired of him acting like he is in WWE. All right, maybe that's where he belongs. I think it's ridiculous. And I think that, when you're growing up, we have, the OGs and our parents and people like that will tell us 2 wrongs don't make it right. Sabonis, yes, he did hold him. He did hook him, he had his ankle locked up or whatever. But it doesn't give him a right to sit there. And the stomp he did, was it the hardest stomp he could have done? Did he curb stomp the guy or anybody like that? No. But for me, he always does little dirty, subtle, like cheap shots where, we've been on the court, we've done things in our lives when we're playing sports or like that, and somebody pushes somebody in the lower back on purpose and then tries to act like it wasn't them and it was just the momentum and this and that. That's what that stomp was to me. It was a subtle little like, oh yeah, I'm going to make this look like I didn't do it on purpose because after all, he hooked my foot. So how else am I going to get up if I don't step on him? Come on, man. Like there's so many different ways he could have handled that beyond just what he did. And then on top of that, the reaction he has with the crowd, to me, is just it's corny now, man. It's just like, we know that you're cool with nobody liking you. We get it. But embracing the total heel role is one thing, but I think it's another thing to go above and beyond to like make people hate you. And he's not good enough to make people hate him on the court. So this is what he does. And I think he should absolutely be suspended.
He's a flat out, he's a dirty player.
He's a punk.
He's a dirty player. He's made questionable moves like this throughout his career.
And it's cost him every time.
And it's cost, you're right. But to me, this was a crack in the armor. This is a team that still thinks it's the top dog and may not be the top dog anymore. Last year may have been the final run, and this is just frustration boiling over.
Well,
and I think it's the sore loser that is Draymond.
He has no idea how to be a gracious loser at all.
100%. And I think you saw some of that in the preseason. Like, let's not forget, we had the conversation on here when he punched his own teammate in the face, when realistically a lot of that was Jordan Poole got paid and he didn't get paid.
Yeah, it's so annoying and just so frustrating. I'm just tired of it. Like, if it was a one-time thing where that happened and he just like blacked out and went into the zone, that's one thing. This is all the time. Like, it's almost like in the playoffs, like every series you expect something to happen with this guy. He can't just go back down the tunnel and say, all right, I messed up, or all right, whatever you want to do to me is whatever. Like, he always has to like rile up the crowd and all this kind of sorry stuff. Like, you're not in a position, first of all, you're not at home. So all you're doing is getting the crowd that's going and rooting against you even more amped up. And there's 5 guys now on the court that have to deal with that. And you don't. If he's at home, that's a different conversation too, because he can rile up the fans to get behind his team. What he's doing now is riling up the fans to go against his team in a dogfight as it is. This series is going to be a bloodbath. It's not over yet. This series is not over.
And wait, speaking about the series, there's obviously Sacramento. They're only halfway there. And Adam, you talked about the Kings. The Warriors feeling like they're still that team. You guys know what the Vegas odds are for the rest of the way for the team to win this series?
I would say Sacramento's minus 160.
I'd say like 110.
Okay. Yeah, Adam's about right. Golden State's only plus 134 to win the series, down 2 games. Like, they're barely an underdog. And the exact result, like if you pick the exact who wins and by what amount of games, Golden State in 7 is the favorite. It's the favorite over Sacramento in 7, over Sacramento in 6, 5, 4. Golden State in 7 is the favorite. You got to remember, this is a team that, for whatever reason, we talked about it last week, they can't play on the road. 11 wins on the road, but at home, they're still one of the best teams in the league, 33. So for them to go back to Oracle and win both games is going to shock nobody.
And that's why I'll say this, and I don't know if this is going out on a big limit or not. If Sacramento steals a game in Golden State, it's over. They're not winning 2 games at Sacramento. They're not.
I agree, but I don't think it's happening. But just one more thing I wanted to mention about the Draymond Green. If he gets suspended, this is a reputation suspension. Nobody, like, he didn't do any. He didn't hurt the man.
He had to get X-rays.
He didn't hurt the man. I don't like. Listen,
but reputation has something to do with it.
But there's another repeat offender in the league who's done dirt over and over, and he did dirt in his college career, and that's Grayson Allen. And Grayson Allen broke Alex Caruso's wrist and got 1 game. So what's the measuring stick here?
I'm not sure on the suspension. I'm going back and forth all day. I don't think he will be suspended because of the amount of ratings and energy this series has brought. I think the NBA wants as many eyeballs as they can on Game 3. So I don't think they're going to suspend them. I'm not sure if I would, but I have no sympathy for that man if he does get suspended.
And it's not a good look that Adam Silver was in the building that night on top of all that. But I read earlier that there's right now they're saying that it's unlikely he's going to get suspended. I completely disagree with that if he doesn't. I completely disagree with it.
Dude, if you're the Kings, do you even want him suspended at this point? He's not doing anything out there for them.
So that's a good point too. I mean, you almost like at one point I was saying that before the series started with the Sixers and Nets, like we want Ben to be playing. Nobody, like, that's one spot that one less person we got to worry about on the offensive end. And I guess it's in this regard, same with them. Draymond is like, I've never been a big Draymond fan. I know he's got really good elite even defense, and that's his calling card. He's been on a great team for his whole career. He's offensively inept. Every time he shoots the ball, I do not expect it to go in from any part of the floor. He's just not. He's just it's a drag to watch him play basketball offensively. And Al, you mentioned about the WWE. He is a gimmick. He's a gimmick.
Yeah. He's the latest in the long line. Joakim Noah, Ron Artest, Dennis Rodman.
Exactly. And he's the next one up. Same exact thing. It's just all gimmick. It's all show. Can he defend? Yeah, I will say he's a good defender. But the yelling in people's faces and being obnoxious to the crowd and clapping in guys and just getting fear in the like, it's just tired to me. You shouldn't need to do that to be successful in the NBA. If he was a football player, maybe that's a little bit different. There's a whole different dynamic there. In the NBA, you shouldn't rely upon that kind of stuff.
Yes, you know what this series reminds me of a little bit? And again, there's a lot left to be played, but the first 2 games at least. Let's be real, we weren't great basketball players, but we played a lot and we went. But do you remember probably 2016-ish, we were playing basketball in that Conshohocken underneath the apartment. And it was me, you, and I think it was Brad. And there were these 3, like the Asian kids.
Mm-hmm.
And we were like, all right, we'll play them 3-on-3. And these kids were like young and didn't know, they busted our ass.
They blew our doors off, dude.
And
they blew our doors
then
off.
we were like, all right, like they were making shots.
They had like set plays. Like
they were making shots from everywhere. And then we were like, all right, let's run it back. And the same thing happened again. And it was just like, holy shit, we're not that we were good ever, but like we ain't young. Like we don't have firepower we used to have anymore. Yeah. And I know they won the title last year, but you're facing the best offensive team in the league. And outside of Steph Curry, who else do you trust completely to have a good game? Like Klay Thompson can have a good game, but he's also not the same player he was 5 or 6 years ago. He can also have a 5 for 17.
Who do you trust to have a good game or that can have a good game, you're saying?
Who do you trust going into game 3 being like, I know this dude's giving me what I need from him on Golden State right now?
I mean, I don't know what you're specifically needing per player, but I mean, I think I have faith in a lot of the I like the Warriors. I have faith in Wiggins. I have faith in Poole. I have faith in Clay. I have faith in Steph.
Poole's making $30 million and played 15 minutes last night.
Yeah, but he's still dangerous, man. I'm not I still have faith in him to be a dangerous asset. On that
but
team.
Do you have faith in him to be one or that he could be one? That's
why I was asking you at the beginning of this. Yeah, that's the difference. I think that I don't know how to answer it, to be honest. I think he could be, but at the same time,
terrible last night.
Yeah,
he had 1 for 7.
He did have a bad game. Yeah,
we're in agreement that Steph can go off. Clay can still go.
No, Steph. I'm saying Steph is a guy for sure.
Clay's still. I mean, even in this series, he still has plenty of games where he can put up high 20s, 30s, if not. And if Wiggins looks sharp. He's a guy that's going to be able to give you.
I mean, he was 1 for 8 from 3 in the first game. He was better last night, but he still hasn't played basketball in 3 months. Like, I don't know if you could be like, I know what I'm getting from him right now.
I think a little bit of that home cooking is going to do this team well. I am going to go on the record and say I think they win both games at home.
I think they might too. I think Sacramento's winning the series though.
I mean, Poole had 17 in game 1. It wasn't like he's been a ghost. He did have last night he had 4 points, 1 for 7. But at least game 1 he gave them contributions off the bench, positive contributions. But again, like Al said, they go back in that building, he's going to be just as dangerous as ever.
Shout out the name we haven't mentioned yet. We talked a lot of Golden State. De'Aaron Fox in the end of that game 1.
Yeah,
that dude's electric, and Monk has looked fantastic too.
Yeah. Dude, Monk's a whole game 2 for them. Monk's a whole. Go ahead, Al.
I said Monk won game 2 for them. Fox won game 1. Monk closed out game 2.
When I watched that game earlier this year, when they played the Clippers in that big, like 165, whatever that 160, whatever the game was, and he had 42 points. I was shocked. I couldn't believe that he was doing what he was doing from historically what we've seen from him before when he was with Charlotte and everything else, and even earlier with the Kings at first. Something's clicked for him this year, and he has that's why we can't just dismiss guys anymore in the NBA, even when they're 2, 3, 4 years even in the league, because some of these guys are coming in the league at 19. Jaden Springer, for instance, was 18. These guys are young still, even in their 4th year. They're only 21, 22, 23 years old. And he's a prime example of that. He's 25 now, and something's clicked, and he's dangerous.
I was a huge Monk guy coming out of college. I really, really liked him. His first step is electric. And he can get to the rim on anybody.
When he gets hot, he's a sniper.
He's a great bench player.
West Coast Maxi.
Yeah,
Similar game. He can drive to the hoop. He's quick as hell. He can shoot the three.
A little bit bigger than Maxi. Well, maybe not.
He's not as good as Maxi, but I like the comparison's fair.
Yeah, what's Maxi listed at height wise?
Probably like 6'3".
Okay, so they're saying Monk's the same size. Okay. Yeah, I always felt like Monk was a little bit bigger, but maybe not.
All right, let's move on. 2 major injuries that happened over the course of the weekend. Giannis injures his back, and ironically, on 2 very similar plays. Giannis gets his back injury listed as doubtful for game 2 tomorrow. John Morant has a hand injury. It looked like he broke his hand the way he reacted driving down the lane. Not broken. I forget what the exact terminology was. His timetable is undetermined at this point. I think he was listed as doubtful as well for tomorrow. Both of those teams lose game 1. Obviously, the Bucks as the 1 seed, Memphis as the 2 seed. Which injury are you more concerned about? I think from a team perspective, we can all agree that we're more concerned from Memphis's standpoint, unless somebody wants to make the case that the Bucks are more in danger. But what injury scares you more in regards to Ja versus Giannis?
For me, it's Giannis because the Bucks have a more legitimate title aspiration than Memphis this year. So yeah, I mean Giannis. Let's be honest. There's been a lot of talk about MVP and who is it, Jokic or Embiid? Guys, it could very well have been Giannis this year too. I mean, the guy is playing out of his mind as he always does. That team only goes as far as he goes. So if he's out there, the Bucks are pretty much cooked. They might lose to Miami.
Yeah, I agree with you to an extent, but I think ultimately Ja is the engine in the Ferrari for the Grizzlies. Without him, you cut the head of the snake. And I don't think, especially against my Lakers, I never thought I'd say that, but for the sake of this pod, my future Western Conference champions, if they don't have to deal with Ja, they're definitely winning the series. Easy. It might even be. I mean, they're saying now that it might not. The MRI looked better than they anticipated, and he may actually even play game 2. Even if he does, he's not going to be able to. His flexion in that wrist is. I can't imagine it being good enough for him to be able to be effective with longer range jump shots, and even going to the hole. Like, is he going to be thinking in the back of his head, like, if I get fouled hard, the wrist is going to react, or if I slam the ball hard against the rim, my wrist is going to react? Like, that's an injury when you're playing basketball. The wrist, especially on your shooting hand, is that's dangerous, man.
Dude, you're back too. You're constantly bending, running, jumping. That's a bad injury. But and Adam, just real quick, Chris, the reason why I said Giannis is because you, along with a lot of other people, picked the Lakers to beat Memphis with Ja. Not many people picked Miami to beat Milwaukee.
Right. Well, in terms of, if you look at it that way, yeah, definitely. But hey, Miami, Miami had a huge injury. Herro breaking his hand.
Tyler.
Yeah, that's a huge injury.
If you ask Reggie Miller on the broadcast said that Herro is a bigger loss than Giannis to the Bucks.
Yeah, I was going to say, when you put it in a vacuum, that I'm not going to say something that
you could put it in a vacuum. No, that's just a wrong statement.
Well, so I said I'm not going to say something that crazy, but at the same time, it is important to that team because he's a big part of what they do. He can handle the ball, he can push the ball, he can shoot. Obviously,
well, the problem is we talked before about potentially playing Miami is they don't have enough offense, and then you just take away probably their second best offensive player.
So do they play? Do they play more of like Caleb Barton, or do they dust Duncan Robinson off?
I mean, Duncan's going to have to give him something.
Yeah, dust him off. His $20 million Chevy that you got in the driveway that you don't use.
Get him in there.
Loves Duncan Robinson, man.
I wanted to take it back to the Lakers real quick. People make fun of Anthony Davis all the time, and rightfully so, because he's so fragile. And of course, he gets hurt in game 1 and can't feel his arm, this and that. defensively at the rim, he's as good as anybody. And if Memphis is going to continue to play Xavier Tillman and Santi Aldama and guys that he doesn't have to worry about, and he can just wait at the rim for that drive, whether Ja's playing or not, they're not going to win this series. The only way they're going to win this series is to play Jaren Jackson at the 5 and put him out on the 3-point line and make Anthony Davis respect that shot a little bit and open up the driving lanes, because he's too good inside. He's as good as Lopez. He's good as Embiid. He's good as Giannis at contesting shots.
And he's thick. You're not gonna be able to just run him over either.
He's a man at this point.
Yeah.
Like he's not a joke. It's a really tough matchup for Memphis, and they're
agree.
obviously tomorrow's a must win. Or they play tonight or tomorrow?
Tomorrow.
So yeah, that's going to be a must win for them. As far as Giannis goes, I'm not overly concerned at this point. I really think, you mentioned without Hero, especially. I think they could beat Miami even without Giannis. But I remember the year that Milwaukee won the title, Giannis went down with that knee injury, and they thought he was done. And then 2 games later, the guy's a machine. Like I'm sure he's going to be back.
I do too. But Miami beat them a couple years back with Giannis playing.
I know, but I think it's a different Miami.
They have that's a good matchup too. Miami is not afraid of the Bucks.
Listen, it's one thing in a game when Giannis goes down. I think the team is always, or same thing when Embiid gets hurt. It's like the team's a little shell shocked. They're not sure what to do. I remember the game the Sixers played the Wizards, game 4. I guess it was the year they lost to the Hawks. Embiid goes down in game 4. They lose that game, and then they come out game 5 and they had a better game plan and they were ready to go and they took care of business. I don't think this series is going any more than 6 with or without Giannis.
Well, this Miami team is better than that Wizards team, though.
Sure.
So
sure, absolutely. I agree with that. Any other observations? I had a couple, but I'll let you throw it to you guys first.
For in terms of which,
just any series out there that you guys wanted to make a comment on.
Real quick, going back to that Kings Warriors series, we haven't talk a lot about the Kings other than Fox and Monk, but I know they're up 2-0. Sabonis is just so overrated to me. I don't know. What do you guys like? I don't like his game at all. I never have. I think like when people talk about like the best centers in the league, and a lot of times he's mentioned up there with like Embiid and AD, and I'm like, I don't see that a little bit. Even in game 1, I mean, game 2 he was decent. Game 1 he had 12 points on 5 for 17. He had 16 boards. The guy's a board man. I will say that.
He led the league in rebounding.
Offensively though, putting the ball in the hoop, like he looks like it's a struggle for him to get the points he gets. Like, and same with Bam. Bam in the playoffs is a whole different Bam than he is in the regular.
I agree with that.
Bam is a struggle to score in the playoffs, man. I don't know what it is for him. If it's just the defense picks up and he's not crafty enough at his position to be able to score, or doesn't trust his jumper enough to be able to shoot him more often, or what, but he's not good in the playoffs. And Miami fans, if you like on social media and things like that, for the last couple seasons now, they have not been big on Adebayo because of these reasons. The postseason, he's let them down a lot more than he has helped them.
I'm with you on Adebayo, especially because you watch him play and his game is so fluid and smooth. And the fact that you watch these guys like Brook Lopez who are able to extend their game to the 3-point line, and the fact that he hasn't been able to step outside of that painted area or that 15-foot range and extend his game is I think it's a huge mistake that he hasn't developed that at this point. I disagree with you 100% on Sabonis. And I think part of it, Chris, is honestly, he's a little undersized. And I think, we're East Coast guys. We're not watching a ton of Sacramento basketball.
But even when he was with the Pacers.
But this is what I'm going to say. He struggles against Joel because Joel's so much bigger than him. And I don't know how much we're watching Sabonis outside of that. He's never played well against the Sixers because of that.
No, he hasn't.
But for the year, the guy averaged 19, 12, and 7 on 61% from the floor. He's a very good passer. He's a very, very good screener. And he rebounds.
But there's even guys like Miles Turner who get eaten by Embiid a lot, but I still think he can play. Like, I just think, like I said, Sabonis is a great rebounder. He plays hard. But I think that I don't know. When I watch him play, I just feel like it's just a struggle for him to get the ball in the hoop. Like, he's not crafty at all. I don't want to hitch my wagon to a guy like that personally. I think
I think he's very good.
And they haven't hitched their wagon to him. He's just one piece in that puzzle.
they got him for they traded. They got him for in the Halliburton deal. That was
but
and it worked out. They had a log jam at guard. They had to get
that's right. I think the Halliburton thing has unleashed Fox. There was
absolutely.
But I guess my point in saying that is when you say about like they didn't hitch their wagon, but at the same time, he was a big. We kept hearing like, well, the Kings aren't going to give up Halliburton, this and that, and all of a sudden, Indy called with Sabonis, and they were like, yeah, we'd love to do that, and they did it. So in a way, they have hitched their wagon to him. That was a big trade to make.
To be fair, with Halliburton, they hadn't made the playoffs, and they get Sabonis. They're the 3 seed in the West. They're up 2-0 on the defending champs.
You could. It's worked out for them. Good luck to them for it. But I also wanted to say about the Nuggets Timberwolves series, which probably will be 4 games or 5 games at most too. But how disappointing again is Cat in a big spot. Like this guy it doesn't see like we talk about Embiid and how he's had playoff history before of underachieving, but his underachieving is like 22, 23 points a game. Some of these guys out here aren't even getting close to that are his peers as far as close to his tier in the league. And I don't know about you guys, but when I look at some of these like stat sheets around the league right now in these postseason games, I'm even more thrilled that we have Joel Embiid than some of these other guys that are parading around as stars that are really stiffs.
He's not a star. Like Cat's got the heart of a kitten, and Anthony Edwards has to get the hell out of there before it's too late.
Well, he's another one though. He hasn't blown up in the playoffs.
Disagree. He was awesome last year.
I'm saying this year. I'm saying so far this year, the play-ins and the first game 1 the other night, he hasn't been that great.
He was fantastic last year.
Last year he was. Oh, absolutely.
That organization's a mess. He's got to get away from there.
Yeah, it's a cornball organization.
We have to apologize to playoff Kawhi.
Yeah, that's what I had. I preached him last week. I talked about him.
I had the Clippers on my picks.
And guess what? They're going to win that series because you got Scott Foster officiating that game tonight.
Yep.
We all know what's going to happen.
Put that bag on the Clippers tonight, Jack.
Dude, I watched the end of that game, and this is again. I don't want to say this is what I talked about last week, but that team's only played 8 games together with Kevin Durant. They were running plays down the stretch where they have Devin Booker and Kevin Durant, and they're running Chris Paul, DeAndre Ayton pick and rolls.
Yeah.
And Chris Paul couldn't throw it in the hoop.
No, and Westbrook's starting to hit his stride a little bit with them too, with the play, within his offense. Was it the best? That was a good matchup.
Was it the best? Was it the best 3 for 19 game of all time?
Yeah, I was going to say he didn't shoot well, but he just had his imprint on the game.
He did. He was all over the place down the stretch. And look, I mean, you look at that matchup for him with Chris Paul, and as many flaws as Russ has, he's faster than Paul. He's stronger than Paul, and he's bigger than Chris Paul. He has no fear of Chris Paul.
He's got to be exhausting to play against.
And he's a big FU guy. I mean, he's heard Westbrook. He's all this crap all the last 2 seasons. He's ready to prove everybody wrong.
Yeah. You saw that video, was it a week or 2 ago when they were playing when they played Memphis, and they showed Westbrook saying to Dylan Brooks, "You trash."
Yeah.
Trash. And just staring at him.
and Phoenix has 0 depth. They only played one guy double-digit minutes off the bench the other night, and it was Landry Shamet. And that includes the fact that they're playing Torrey Craig X amount of minutes.
Yeah, there was a guy named Jock Landale that got into that game.
The Aussie.
A little bit of time.
Yeah, he's one of them guys. I don't know what his skill set is that keeps him in the NBA. What does he really do because he's been around a couple years now.
He's a backup 5, man.
Who's another one?
Some size.
Dude, another one is friggin' Bismack Biyombo. I feel like he's been in the league since like 1985.
Dude, to be fair, Embiid was coasting when we played the Suns at the end of the season, but Bismack was giving him the business.
He did. He was, Joel was thinking about something else going on that night. But
Bismack was working.
That was the only game I ever seen Biyombo score a basket. I think that's the only time I ever seen him score. Like he's terrible.
I still wouldn't be shocked if Phoenix made a run in the series, but again, it's hard when you haven't played that many games. History has shown it's been 30 years since somebody's made a trade at the deadline to add a monster piece. and they're doing it on even a shorter time frame. Like it's not great.
NBA Today had a stat today when I was watching earlier when I got home from the job. Durant's Durant teams now are 0 for their last 7 playoff games.
Yeah, because of everything that happened in Brooklyn.
That's shocking.
What about Biombo teams?
And the last thing I wanted to say too was King Jokic had 13 points in that 9
fouled out too.
So take that for what it's worth.
Al, I know you want to talk about one other guy. There was one other thing I wanted to mention in the Sixers net series, and I know this is the wrong segment to do so. I think the trapping that the Nets are doing is directly affecting their second half performance. I think there's a lot of rotation. There's a lot of effort being put into the trapping, and I think they're running out of steam at the end of games. Just wanted to add that to my thoughts. But Al, there's one other guy you want to touch on to segue to segment 3.
Well, yeah. Before that, real quick, I just wanted to say Cleveland and New York it looks like it's going to be the dogfight we thought with New York winning the first game. Cleveland is absolutely destroying them right now as we speak.
Yeah.
They're up 103-76, so that game is effectively over.
Yep.
But yeah, I just wanted to mention I talked about putting respect on playoff Kawhi's name, just putting respect on playoff Jimmy Butler, because he did what I felt really dumb when the Sixers took the floor in the playoffs in game 1, and I watched PJ Tucker just mold into that role that we signed him for. And I said to myself, man, what an idiot I was to be criticizing him all season long when he was just playing okie doke. He was just doing what he needed to do to get through the regular season. Jimmy Butler does that times 100. Jimmy Butler in the playoffs versus Jimmy Butler in the regular season is Superman and Clark Kent. And it's amazing that this dude has been able to do it for as long as he has at the level that he has. And so I think that when you talk about some of the best playoff performers in our lifetime, Jimmy Butler is up there, top 10, probably just off the top of my head.
Yeah, playoffs is legacy time, man. And he just finds a way to he's about crafty. He doesn't have any specific skill set that you're like, well, that's the Jimmy crossover, or that's the Jimmy whatever. Like he just plays basketball.
Yep.
Like he just knows how to hoop.
He's talented.
So yeah, he's been awesome.
But that's a great segue as we're going to jump into segment 3, where we're going to touch on some of the all-time playoff performers in our lifetime. So stay tuned to segment 3. We'll be right back. Welcome back to segment 3 as we watch, some NBA playoff basketball. We mentioned some clutch performers, some all-time big games. Danny Green out here dropping threes. If you remember back in the 2013-14 finals when he went crazy the first few games. But we're going to name some of our all-time playoff performers in our lifetime. Al, I'm going to throw it to you to start. Give us a good name.
I mean, I'll start out with the name, the number one, I think, playoff performer of all time, especially when you think of a guy who didn't necessarily, he wasn't a big impact guy in the regular season. He was never the guy on a team, but as far as the playoffs, his fingerprints are all over multiple titles for multiple teams, and that's Robert Horry. Big shout out.
Big shout out.
I mean, he's number one. He's never. What is it? The stat? He's never a team that he was on has never lost in the NBA Finals. So
how many rings does he have? Like 7?
No. He's got 2 with the Rockets.
Right.
3 with the Lakers.
3 with the Lakers and 1 or 2 with the Spurs.
1 with the Spurs, I think. I think 1 with the Spurs.
You both 6.
Yeah, you're right. It was more than I thought.
So
he had 3 with the Lakers?
Yeah, he had to have been there for all 3, right?
I'm gonna Google. I'm gonna
Speaking of Lakers,
keep going.
Episode 41, we tried to mention the great Glenn Rice.
Glenn Rice.
That's a good one.
Yeah. So obviously the game 4 in the 2002 Western Conference Finals against the Kings, which we've talked about before, that maybe a little bit of in that game, in that series, excuse me. Some
7 rings.
Yeah, 7 rings. But in 2005, the NBA Finals, kind of a forgotten sometimes shot with the Spurs, where he wins it in overtime to defeat the Detroit Pistons in a series that was tied 2-2 at the time, I believe, and propels San Antonio to go ahead and win an NBA title against a Detroit team that had just dispatched and swept the Lakers the year before. So that was where that Detroit Pistons team was starting to really, kind of make their place in history as, hey, we're a dominant team. So Robert Horry, to me, the greatest playoff performer of our lifetime, and it might maybe of all time.
But was Robert Horry more big shot or big game?
Well, I think they kind of a little bit go hand in hand. Like the big shot makes the game.
Yeah, but I don't know how many games did he dominate.
No, I don't know if he wasn't never that kind of guy.
Yeah,
But
he had ice in his veins.
yeah, exactly.
There's nothing wrong with that.
I remember being younger watching like regular games on like TNT or whatever on weeknights sometimes, like during when we were in school and stuff. And he would have games where he was not like he wasn't good at all. And then he would get in these like he got a whole new zone and everything in the postseason where like he just had confidence.
Yeah.
And the team had confidence in him, more importantly. And he just made other teams pay all the time in those spots, man. He was dangerous. When he got the ball in those spots, you were just like, oh, there it goes. Big shot, Bob.
Yeah, in that game 5 that I just spoke about, he scored all of his points in the fourth quarter and overtime. Like he just saved his best performances for when it mattered most. It's like if you have Chris Jenkins making that Villanova shot, but making it like multiple times
every year
over 2 decades.
Yeah.
I may have mentioned this in a previous podcast. During COVID, like the beginning of COVID, when everybody was locked in, I was watching some old NBA's finals games. So I started in like 2000. So I watched a lot of Lakers from that time. Underrated athlete, Robert Horry. Could dunk and could jump. It wasn't really the old standstill shooter that you kind of think of him as.
Yeah, no. You remember watching the I guess it was the 98 finals, Jazz and Bulls. You remember the unsung hero in game 6 of that series?
So I didn't go. I started Lakers Pacers was the first one I watched, which was
so you did, okay.
2000. But give me whose name you're thinking of.
That Antoine Carr. He had 20 points off the bench.
That's a name.
And they won in Chicago and forced to go back to game 5, excuse me. They forced it to go back to Utah. But that was like the big moment of his life. That dude was not great, but he killed them in that game.
Shout out Antoine.
And 20 points off the bench back then was like 30.
Because they were only scoring like 80 in a game.
Exactly.
All right, I'll go next. I've got a guy we've mentioned on this podcast before, actually has Philadelphia sports ties. But there is no pitcher that was as big game of a lockdown guy to me than Curt Schilling. Some stats for you. 19 career playoff starts, 11-2, 2.23 ERA, 120 strikeouts. In 2001, he had 6 starts for Arizona, a 1.12 ERA, a .64 whip, and 10.4 Ks per 9, and 3 complete games. Add that to the bloody sock game, and you have a legacy that was he was a big game pitcher, and he was a great regular season pitcher, but I don't think it stacks up to the fact of how good he was in the postseason. And I think we mentioned earlier, in that 93 playoffs with Philadelphia, he was throwing complete games of 150 pitches, 140 pitches. He was a horse.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I mentioned before about having issues with like my feet and stuff like that. So I've had several bloody sock over the last couple of years, and I couldn't even like function around in an office, let alone playing in a meaningful game. It's the most important player on the field, like he did in that spot. But the only thing about Schilling though is as good as he always as he was. I know he's kind of a whack job now, but I always still see in my head that image in 93 in game 6 when Mitch is on the mound and they have that shot of Schilling with the towel over his head during the game. And it just pisses me off to this day about him. I just can't do it with him. He's just so, that was just so.
Let me tell you this.
Teammate, I thought.
If you were your age now and rewatching that series, you'd have a towel on your head too.
But I wasn't playing.
I hear you.
That's how my teammates on the field.
I understand what you're saying. But Mitch was toast, and everybody knew it, and the rest is history.
When we talk about guys like Curt Schilling, man, it just makes me miss those powerhouse workhorse pitchers so damn much. And let me ask you guys this, just off the cuff, off the top of your head: him and Randy Johnson that year with the Diamondbacks, is that top 3 of our lifetime?
3.
Is
Maybe
it number
number
1?
one.
Is it
I
number
was gonna
1?
say, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I have to think a little bit harder about it, but I'm not sure.
As far as like the whole package of the intimidation, the
Oh,
stats
just
to back it up, the skills,
the best 1-2 punch. Like it's up there with like the Randy Wolf and Brandon Duckworths. It's up there with
David Coggins.
Like I'm trying to think of who else would be up there. Like the names that came to mind was, and you're gonna laugh at this, but like Mark Pryor, Kerry Wood, 2003 was
dude,
legit, but
that
not
that
it
was the other
was
one I thought of.
not level of Kerry Wood or not level of Randy Johnson, Kurt Schilling. And
But
you
the
would
one
probably,
year, man, they were
huh?
fierce. That one year when Wood had like the 20 strikeout game,
Yeah, that was like '03 when they went to the NLCS and lost to Florida.
and there was probably a Braves year where where
Sure,
some
Maddox,
combo of
Glavine,
Maddox,
Smoltz.
Glavine, and Smoltz
Oh
were,
yeah.
and even maybe Millwood were
But
up there.
But I think to Chris's point, like as good as Maddox and Glavine and Smoltz were, they didn't have the intimidation factor of a Randy Johnson and a Kurt Schilling. I
That's
don't think you were getting in the box worried about getting knocked over when you faced Greg Maddox because he just wasn't throwing as hard or with
Yeah,
that
yeah.
intimidating presence um, as
Well,
a Kurt Schilling and a Randy Johnson. Those two were just they were completely dominant. And here's a trivia question for you, Chris, if we're running random names out there. I'm pretty sure Arizona only used 3 pitchers in that playoffs. They would use those guys on 3 days rest. Do you know who the third starter was during that playoff run for Arizona?
Rob Nen.
That's a reliever.
yeah, I was gonna say he never started a game in his life. Um I don't think he would. I think he would. I think the guy I'm going to mention ended up being a reliever too, but maybe at that point he wasn't. Byung Hun Kim.
No, he was the closer.
Okay, all right. I didn't know if he was already at that point yet or not.
Pat Henkin.
That's the way you said it.
How about that? How about that Miguel Batista?
Oh man,
Oh boy, the animal.
But
I would
Al,
have
to
never
your
got that.
point about workhorses, I don't think a Phillies pitcher has pitched into the 7th inning this year.
Yeah, they might not for the rest of the season.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what they're waiting for.
But that was my guy, Chris. Why don't you hit us with one of yours?
So there's only been like 2 moments that I've in history of my existence of watching sports where I literally had chills and glassy eyes watching it. One was Tiger Woods at the Masters in 2019. The other one was back in 2007, sitting in my room at mom's crib as a senior in college in 2007, Eastern Conference Finals, watching LeBron score 25 straight points in the fourth quarter, lifting the Cavs over the Pistons in that game in overtime. He also scored a game-winning layup that game. And 29 of the last 30 points of the game overall were his. And that was when they had the witness campaign. Remember that with the Nike had the witness, we're all witnesses. And I'm watching that and I'm like, oh my God. Like this guy is legit. This is he but now the kids say I am him, he is him. That was the time where it was like he is him. Like he is the one we all thought he was. And at the time, if you remember, he had gotten some heat because they didn't make the playoffs right away with him.
Mm-hmm.
And they finally, when they got there and he was in that spot, and Detroit was bad. And I'm saying bad in a good way. Like they were dangerous back then. They were so hard to beat. Their defense was so tough to crack. And he just went out there at the Palace and just gave it to him. And that was like, I had like my hair was just standing up on my arms watching that. I was like, every basket was like, this guy just like, look at this guy. Look at him. Look at him.
Dude, I remember watching that game and we were talking on AOL Instant Messenger and you wrote "We are witnesses." I remember that moment.
Yeah, man. That was the most incredible performance. I mean, we talked about there's times where, Jordan at the Boston Garden back in the day and different guys, Reggie Miller's had his games where he's, put the lights out for teams. But that performance, man, like the NBA is so hard to score, right? And then you're playing a team that's a great defensive team on top of that. And you're 22 years old? And you just put an NBA franchise in the playoffs on your back like that was just incredible, man. Awesome performance.
That to me was not even the best LeBron playoff game ever.
I
To
feel
me,
like people forget about that game though. They don't
no,
know.
listen,
They
it
talk
was
enough about that game.
it's just how great he is. To me,
Right.
and I have this game on my list. 2012. So if you remember the 2011 finals, he went into like a coma against Dallas.
Yeah,
Really, really strange
yeah,
year.
he got a lot of heat. Yep.
A lot of first year in Miami.
Right.
Goes to 2012. They are in the Eastern Conference Finals against Boston. They win the first 2 games of this series. Then they lose 3 in a row, and he's not playing great. Goes into Game 6 in Boston. Legacy
Yeah.
on the line
Yeah.
after 2011, and goes 45, 15, and 5 on 19 of 26 shooting. They beat the Celtics in Boston by 20, close them out in Game 7, goes on to win Finals MVP, and the rest is history.
Yeah, that's a great one too. I mean, he's the king. Like I know a lot of people hate on the dude for whatever reason that they have. He's all. I mean, he in the golden era of the NBA that we're in right now, where it's been the these guys are at the pinnacle of athleticism that they've ever been in the history of basketball. And for him to do what he's doing still at 38, the guy could. I mean, there's a time in history where his stat line this year, if he had played enough games, would have gotten him MVP this year. And it's just incredible what this guy, like Jordan played to whatever. I mean, it was around this age, I think. But the Wizards were a shell. Like they were just a Michael Jordan show. They had a ceiling. It was more just a circus, a show to see Jordan still play. LeBron can still win a title. Like we talk about Tiger, if he can win another championship, another major. LeBron is in the same boat at his age still. Like we have that conversation. Can he win another title? And I think he can.
One more thing on LeBron. I just put a note here. In the 2015 finals, that was the first time he went with Cleveland going back. They lose to Golden State. And when the series when Kyrie and Kevin Love get hurt.
Right.
Here are the stat lines for his games. 44, 8, and 6, 39, 16, and 11, 40, 12, and 8, 20, 12, and 8, 40, 14, and 11, and then 32, 18, and 9.
And that series, he was literally, I mean, it was him and it was
Mozgov.
Yeah, who got paid. LeBron needs to get a check from Mozgov every other week.
It was Mozgov.
Varejao too.
Dude, it may have been Mozgov and Tristan Thompson playing center and power forward.
And then they had was Boobie Gibson on that team back
then?
No,
that's old. Dellavedova was playing point.
Dellavedova, that's who it was. Yeah.
Other guy that owes him a check.
Yep. That the whole
that
city owes him.
And I think they won 2 games from Golden State.
He did. Yeah.
Which is amazing. But LeBron's an animal.
Yeah, he's the king, man. No doubt.
Well, I have a couple. I could have segued from both either Adams or Chris's. But since I'll keep the basketball talk up. Since Chris mentioned that Detroit team, and I mentioned them earlier. So one of my next clutch playoff performer is Mr. Big Shot, Chauncey Billups.
Yeah.
Chauncey Billups is a guy that made a name for himself, basically, really in that one year, 2004, where he had the Game 5 in the Eastern Conference Finals, where he took down Adams' Nets. He banked the 3 in at the buzzer to force overtime.
God, what an era that was, having to hear that BS about the Nets all the time from him.
And that little rat Lawrence Frank afterwards. Yeah. We should have guarded him.
Yeah. That was such a bad time for. Yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry.
It was a down year. It was a couple down years there. Yeah. But then in the finals, he stamps his legacy with him winning the NBA Finals MVP award. He averages 21 points a game against the Lakers, who they sweep, that's the dynasty Lakers, and they sweep them. He shoots 51% and 47% from 3. He was not any type of sharp shooting 3-point specialist. For his career, he shot like 33 or 34%. So he really torched the Lakers in that series. He gave himself that nickname, Mr. Big Shot, and won the.
And it's surprising that his percentages were what they were, because when you watched him in his prime, it felt like every shot he shot, he made it.
Yeah,
like he was such a dangerous scorer. I mean, a shooter, and he ran a good offense.
He did.
Like he was a nice floor general.
I was just gonna say floor general, and
he was a nice floor.
And that team was constructed so well because as much as he had such a big finals and a big playoff run, they didn't have a guy like Rip Hamilton could go off for 20 something one night. Billups could do it another night. Sheed could do it another night.
Deshaun.
Prince could do it one night. Like they were just such a team, man. They were a team.
Yeah, I mean, and defensively, they were just lights out.
Yeah, Ben Wallace, my man.
They were lights out, man, from defensively.
Yeah. Who drafted Chauncey Billups? Anybody have the answer to that?
Denver, wasn't it?
Boston.
Oh no, yeah, that's right. That's right.
Boston Celtics drafted him number 3 overall.
Yeah.
Out of Colorado.
Was that the year they took him and Mercer?
I don't know if Mercer was maybe, but they trade Chauncey Billups his rookie year. The number 3 pick in the draft. Imagine trading your number 3 pick in the draft for Kenny Anderson, Popeye Jones, and Zon Tabak.
Oh my God, Zon Tabak.
That's who Chauncey Billups was traded for in his rookie year.
Zon Tabak. One time I was on some trip or something, and I bought a pack of basketball cards, and Zon Tabak was in that pack. I just left that card in the hotel room. I took all the other cards home.
I just remember him in like Live 98 being like one of the biggest dudes in the game, and you would just draft him in like one of the last picks in your little draft, just so you could have this freakish center that you had.
I don't remember
because in video games having just the big white stiff center was huge.
Yeah,
because they wouldn't play like they played in real life.
No,
you could run them all around the court.
Oh yeah,
yeah.
They blocked everything on the video game.
Yeah, where'd Chauncey Billups go to school? Adam, I know you know this.
Colorado.
Colorado.
Chris said that earlier, or you said that.
Yeah, Buffaloes.
I'll go back to the Diamond. Again, a pretty obvious one. Leader of the probably the last dynasty we've seen in baseball. I mean, Derek Jeter was Mr. Clutch.
Mr. November, they called him.
Mr. November for his walk-off homer against Arizona in 2000? No, 2001 when they lost to them.
He probably gave away a lot of gift baskets that week.
But just some numbers. Derek Jeter played in 158 playoff games, which is basically a full season. He hit 308, 200 hits, 111 runs, 20 homers, 61 RBIs. He's got 5 championships. I think he's got 5.
You ever think he got tired of being like the whole thing, like the captain and the Yankees and the women? Do you ever think like at any point you get tired of that?
Did you watch the documentary they did on ESPN? He loved every second of it.
I was going to say, I don't know if I would get tired of it.
How could you hate that? All he did was win for years he was in the league.
He was shadily very self-conscious. Did you watch it or no?
The Jeter documentary?
Yeah.
A little bit of it. I didn't finish it, but
like when A-Rod came to town, he was the beef with him and A-Rod was very real.
Yeah, I remember.
And he basically said to A-Rod, like, because A-Rod moved over to third base, obviously, and he goes, "Why would you come here to play third base?" He was like, "You're a shortstop." He's like, "You think you're gonna like come here?" And he was very threatened by A-Rod, thinking that A-Rod was going to eventually try and take shortstop from him the entire time, and that was basically what led to the big rift between those two throughout. But very, very self-conscious and
they were rivals for years. Like,
but they were boys.
But they were still like conscious of each other and their skill sets, and they would always be in comparison to each other. Right. I remember in that when he had mentioned like this, I think they had a Sports Illustrated cover at one point when they were like rookies.
Yeah, they came up together.
You know, even like the positioning of where they sat was a big deal, and just the whole thing.
And it was interesting because I mean, A-Rod was the better player. A-Rod had the individual accolades, and Jeter was having the team success. So there was always that dynamic of who you would rather be.
Yeah.
But what a life for Jeter to be the shortstop of the New York Yankees his entire career. Just an absolute legend. Never got in trouble. Always kept his stuff under wraps. And if you watch that documentary, it wasn't because he was staying in his house all the time. The guy partied plenty.
Oh yeah.
Was just able to keep it under control. And I mean, when you talk about the greatest New York Yankees of all time, he's on the list.
Yeah. Oh, on the list. He might top the list.
Maybe.
He very well could. I was gonna go. I had two of the basketball ones. I don't know if you guys want to go back to
I have one quick baseball one.
Yeah, go ahead,
Al. Guys, 2008.
Yeah, I was Cole.
Chooch-tober.
Yep.
Chooch-tober. I mean, dude, Carlos Ruiz, first of all,
Chooch. It's Cole Hamels.
I was saying, of all people, you put Ruiz on there?
Yeah, it's because the angle I took this was, again, guys that weren't really special,
Okay.
weren't really superstars in the regular season, but had a run or had a couple games in the postseason. So yeah, I looked at Cole Hamels, and obviously his 2008 was incredible, but Cole Hamels was a very good all-star pitcher. Chooch goes on to hit the go-ahead home run in the second inning of Game 3, and then hits the game-winning dribbler up the third base line in the bottom of the ninth, at the top of the ninth, whatever, well, bottom of the ninth.
Yeah.
Which scores? You remember who scored that run?
Bruntlett, wasn't it?
Eric Bruntlett.
Yeah.
Dude, Chooch had a heck. He was a heck of a playoff guy. He was a heck of a World Series guy. He slashed 375, 500, 688 in that 2008 World Series.
75, really?
Dude, what's that?
I didn't know he slashed those numbers that high.
Yeah, man, dude, he was in the 2 World Series series they played in. He came to play.
Yeah.
And then listen, he also defensively, he caused the playoff no-hitter for Roy Halladay. I mean, you can't.
And all the games that Hamels had no 8.
Right.
I mean,
So, yeah. Chooch Tober for me. That's a playoff guy for you.
Give me a random Eric Bruntlett fact. It should be exactly what I'm thinking of.
The triple play, right? Did he have
unassisted triple play?
Yeah.
Yeah.
He also had that home run in Game 2.
Correct. Off David Price, I think.
I think so, yeah.
Yeah.
Al, I'll see you, Chooch, and I'll raise you, Nick Foles.
Wow.
I mean, Nick Foles is a great one.
Super Bowl MVP, man. Like, talk about a guy that wasn't a star that came up and rose to the occasion. Like, Jesus. I mean, he went toe to toe with the GOAT and lived to see another day. Like, he won the duel. He beat Seltzer, what's your name for him? I'm not saying it, but you can say
BDN,
it.
dude.
Yeah, BDN. And then winning the MVP of the Super Bowl at that because of his efforts. Like, that guy wasn't. I mean, we all remember that run we had, and everybody, the pundits, were saying how we were still the underdogs in every game, and we had the dog masks and all that kind of stuff, being the underdogs. Nobody was more of an underdog than Nick Foles. He was captain underdog, and we all know how it all played out. And he hasn't looked half decent ever since. I'm so convinced that there was divine intervention in that season for him to play the way he did. It was like, it reminds me of like Angels in the outfield when all of a sudden they all clicked and all the Angels were making guys dive all over the place. I just saw Angels around Nick Foles at every throw he made in the Minnesota game and then in the Super Bowl. Always reminds me of that. But yeah, he was, I mean, that's a much spot and an overachieving spot than that.
That's a good one. All right. I'll go. I know we're not a hockey podcast, but I tried to throw a hockey name in there just to keep it honest. And this guy is an all-time great, so he's not from out of nowhere, but his postseason numbers were surprising to me. That's Mark Messier. Mark Messier, 14 shorthanded playoff goals in his career.
That's impressive.
295 career points in 236 games. The second most playoff points in the history of hockey, behind obviously Gretzky.
Right.
And a 6-time Stanley Cup winner.
Well, he won all those cups with the Oilers back.
Yeah, with Edmonton, right? And then obviously in '94 with the Rangers. I'm
Listen,
not going to pretend to know anything else about Mark Messier, but to have the second most points of all time in the playoffs and 14 shorthanded goals in the playoffs, that's an accomplishment to me. And I thought it was overall impressive. And to be a 6-time Cup winner.
And the win one in New York, like if you don't live in the United States and you're not really, like, you would imagine that New York is always the best in everything because it's the biggest city in the country and one of the biggest cities in the world. But New York teams don't win a lot. Especially within the last 20, 30 years, they don't win a lot of championships. So for him to win a title in the biggest city, like New York, and have a parade in Times Square and in Manhattan, like, that must be awesome.
And what's crazy about that is, like, there are certain teams or years where somebody wins a championship, and for some reason, for me, it'll stick in my head. Like, you could say, for whatever reason, 2003 World Series champions, and the Marlins just come to my head right away. Like, I don't know why. Maybe it's because of the way they did it. 94 Stanley Cup, I think of the Rangers immediately.
And going against those Vancouver Canucks and those
Trevor
black and
Linden.
gold.
Was that Pavel Bure?
I think Pavel was on that squad. Trevor Linden definitely was.
Those black and gold unis that they had back then.
I think Don McLean was in net for the Canucks. Is that correct?
I don't know. Was it Richter? The
Yeah,
pride
Mike
of
Richter was
Flower Town?
definitely in net for the
Mike
Rangers.
Richter, yeah.
Brian Leach.
Another reason you probably remember that is because it was arguably the craziest day in
Oh, the
modern
OJ
America.
stuff.
Huh?
The OJ
Well,
stuff.
You had the OJ. It's one of my favorite ESPN 30 for 30s.
Yeah.
That day they had the OJ chase. You had the Stanley Cup parade in New York. You had Arnold Palmer's last round at the U.S. Open. You had the
The
game
NBA
one
Finals.
NBA Finals at the Garden. And there was there was something else too that happened that day. It was nuts. I mean, that documentary is so impactful because there's not one word of commentary on it. It's all just footage of the day and all the events that happened, and it's incredible. It's so awesome. But that's one of the reasons why I remember it is because that day was just insane.
That's a good reason why.
So I also have a hockey guy, my one and only, and I again kept it local.
Danny B.
Danny playoffs.
Yeah, that was a big one. Yeah,
Danny playoffs. So here are some numbers for Danny Briere in this playoffs. First of all, if you remember, he had a really bad regular season for his standards, and the city was down on him. He was nursing, I think, a groin injury for part of that season that he had hurt in February. But in the 2010 Stanley Cup run in the playoffs, he scores 30 points in 23 games, which breaks the record for the most points in a postseason by a Flyer, previously held by who?
Bobby C.
Brian Prop.
Proper.
Brian Prop.
Bobby.
He goes on to score that. He scores the game tying wraparound goal against Boston in game 7 to tie it at 3-3 after the Flyers had given up 3 goals early on. In the Stanley Cup Finals, he finishes with 12 points in the series, 3 goals and 9 assists, only 1 point shy of Wayne Gretzky's record of 13. That's how good his playoff run was and his Stanley Cup final run was that year. Danny playoffs 2010 all-time run.
Yeah, that's a great one. Now I remember that year really well, but for whatever reason with this exercise we're doing that escaped me, but that's a good one.
And we were talking about it, right before we came on for this third segment. Man, when I was watching the highlights from that season, those playoffs, boy, it made me really miss Flyers playoff hockey. We're not hockey guys. We say it all the time, but Flyers playoff hockey when they're good, man, it's good. It's fun to watch.
It's fun. Yeah, and he's going to have the toughest task he's ever had, manning the ship for the Flyers now in the front office of the organization.
Mm-hmm.
He got a big ask to make them a playoff team soon. I know he said, I think today or yesterday, about having the fans give him some time and having patience. I'm like, bro, we already had 2 years now of patience, and we got to start officially from scratch. Like that, Fletcher ruined that team like into the ground.
Yeah, but what was their last Stanley Cup win was in the set. This is 50 years. 50 years since they've won a Stanley Cup. Patience.
Yeah, a lot of those Flyers fans, that's news to them. But
yeah, a whole generation has died. Talk about patience.
Yeah. Well, until they get rid of that bigot that they got last year, I'm not really going to participate in watching them. But I hope at some point in the near future that they get it together. But D'Angelo, I can't do it. Can't do it well. He's a cheap shot artist and he's a bigot and the whole thing.
Yeah.
But I wanted to say real quick, I had 2 other basketball ones. Obviously, Iverson game 1 in 2001. Not only did he step back over to Tyronn Lue, not only did he carry the team on his back, but he had 48 points, if I'm not mistaken, 48 in that game 1 win, which to all of Sixers Nation is a championship game because the rest of the series never happened. So that is like our big pinnacle for the Sixers in our generation, at least our lifetime. And then the other thing I wanted to say was 2 years ago, Giannis, 50 points and 5 blocks in the deciding game 6, giving the Bucks their first title in since the 70s. So I think that's a forgotten game already.
It is.
I'm not the biggest, like, obviously we're in an era where it's like Embiid or Jokic or Giannis. You can't really support multiple of those three. But damn, man, like 50 and 5 blocks in an NBA Finals game is in a deciding game at that is just incredible, man.
It's the curse of everything being available all the time.
Yeah,
because we see it all the time. So something like that, where 20 years ago it would be something that we watched and talked about forever, it just is another game somehow.
Oh yeah,
In a game, somehow it's just another game. It's ridiculous to say.
And his block to cap it off, where he's in the drop coverage and he steps out and then he recovers and blocks the alley oop. That should be an all-time highlight. That's up there with LeBron's block, the Jordan layup where he switches hands, and it's forgotten.
They were all impactful blocks, and yeah, it's like it never happened. Like you don't see it.
It's a forgotten finals.
It is,
and maybe that's because Milwaukee's not a big fan base overall for the league. Maybe that's part of it. I mean, Giannis is a big following, so I would think that would cancel it out, but maybe that's part of it. I don't know. But other than that, the last thing I had was, I feel like I talked about it a lot on this show. At some point I try to fit it in, but that Allen versus Mahomes playoff game in 2021, a divisional round playoff game where they just dueled it out, was just incredible. One of the sickest, maybe the sickest football game I've ever seen to this day.
Yeah.
I got one more, Al. How many more you got? Mine's quick.
I have 3, but I'll be quick too. Go ahead, name your one. I'll just rattle mine off.
I have Adam Vinatieri.
Yeah, that's my football guy.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, a kicker, you can only do so much, but every time that guy had a big kick to win a Super Bowl, to win a big game, whether it was the tuck rule in the snowstorm, Super Bowl against the Eagles, Super Bowl against the Panthers, or I'm sorry, not the Eagles, Panthers, the one against the Rams. I made every kick.
Yeah,
I really did. So
Yeah,
that was my football guy.
He's clutch.
The only other 2 I have then is playoff Rondo. It just seemed like to me, I remember Rajon Rondo back with the Celtics. Anytime I watched him in the playoffs, it seemed like he was just so much better than he was in the regular season. And then Reggie Miller.
Yeah.
Oh, Reggie Miller's a really good one.
Reggie Miller, 8 points, 9 seconds against the Knicks. Game 4 buzzer beater in '98 against the Bulls to tie the series.
Dude, the choking with Spike Lee.
Yeah, but that wasn't the playoffs though.
But
was
still,
it?
though, but like
Yeah.
his clutch gene that he had, he was just awesome.
Yeah, and then 34 and 17 against the Knicks in the 2000 Eastern Conference Finals. 34.17 in the fourth in 2000 Eastern Conference Finals. He also very sneakily averaged like it was like 30 something in a series. I think it might have been against the Sixers.
Well, that one, I think 2001 when they were the 8th seed.
It was against the Sixers. He averaged 31 and 5 boards.
I would say he was a one-man show. Was that no one?
Yeah.
Yeah, he was a one-man show that series. And I believe they stole a game, didn't they? Didn't he win 3-1?
No. So they stole game 1. He had a shot at the buzzer to beat us with like 1 second left.
Right.
And then I just looked this up now because I kind of remembered it. Game 2, he had 33 at half.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Only scored 41 in the game. Sixers come back and win the series in 4.
I hated him as a fan at the time, but historically now that he's done playing, like I mean, I respect the hell out of him. He was a sniper. He was a killer. And he'd be better now than he was even back then because of the rules and everything. I think he'd be even better now than he was when he played.
He would be a monster in today's league. At 6'7",
yep.
Also, he would be a monster.
Him and Steph would just trade threes from like the other foul line.
100%. I never liked him, but I mean,
same.
You got to give him the credit now. You got to respect the game.
Yep.
The other thing, and I hate to do this because we're a Philly podcast, and we kind of mentioned him earlier, but Kawhi Leonard, 2019, that run, the shot. Yep. I say that as I just watched him completely strip Durant trying to cross him over and then just dunked on him at the same time.
He's on his way to doing it again.
One of the greatest playoff performers in the history of basketball. I mean, he already got a Finals MVP. Like he's got 2 Finals MVPs.
I forgot about the one with the Spurs. I don't know.
He won it with the Raptors, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, he's got 2 then because he won the one with in
Spurs
15 with the Spurs.
Yeah,
I'm for sure one of the greatest finals or playoff performers in the history of basketball.
You talk about a guy. You talk about a guy that's like wake me up when it matters. He's number 1 of that that group.
Yeah,
Like, I mean, he literally doesn't care at all about regular season basketball.
yeah. I'm sorry for all you Philly. Well, listen, we're a lot of Philly-based listeners, and I'm sorry that we had to say it, but it's
Listen, I see that shot in my dreams like at least twice a week. I still think at that shot all the time.
I'm in the room. I'm in the room where I watched it, and I just
Yeah.
remember being like, I can't believe that went in.
Yeah.
Chris, speaking about dreams, I forgot to tell you guys this off the pod. A couple nights ago, it might have even been last night, I had a dream that we were recording a pod and it was at Adam's house. But like, you have a dream, it's not really like the person's house.
Yeah.
So Adam's having a party at his house and we're trying to record a pod and we're recording it outside in the yard. And it's a party's going on at the same time. And for whatever reason, the episode, we decided that it was going to be a rap episode and everybody was rapping a verse on the episode. So I don't know if that's a sign that maybe we have to do an upcoming episode where we all spit some bars.
Well, of course, I brought bars to the dream, I'm sure, too, like in reality. But I will say I contemplated, and I still contemplate having a double I
whoa.
Wait a minute, let me finish. Of doing the our theme and making it a double I theme song for 3 in the Keystone.
Look, I got students that tell me they listen to this. I don't know if I can do that.
On that note, we'll wrap up episode 41. Any final thoughts before we go into the hopefully the Sixers closeout games in Brooklyn?
Yeah, hopefully we're out of here and done and talking about the Celtics next week.
Yeah, let's sweep Brooklyn and move on.
I agree with that. And without any further ado, let's drop that beat.